hearing in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 11. Notice is hereby given that the Bolton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, October 11, 2017, at 7:30 p.m. in the Board of Selectmen room of the Town Hall, 663 Main Street, Bolton, Mass., to hear and act upon the application of Babacool Arts, Yvette Monstad, 218 Sugar Road, Bolton, Mass. 01740. The applicant is seeking a special permit pursuant to Section 250-27.1, barn, stable, and carriage house preservation of the Code of the Town of Bolton to conduct a home occupation, an art studio, in the barn located at 218 Sugar Road, identified on Assessor's Map 5.d as Parcel 10 in Bolton's residential zoning district. Welcome. How are you?
Good.
I think this is our first ever
Yes.
formal application for the barn and carriage house bylaw. That's kind of cool. Want to tell us just a little bit about who you are, what you'd like to do?
Okay. I have been an artist, both metal and pottery, for about 10 years. My family and I moved to Massachusetts 3 years ago from Minnesota. We moved to Bolton 1 year ago. We bought this property actually about 14 months ago. And we love it. It's charming. We're looking for an old colonial. As an artist, I have a lot of appreciation for the beauty of the old craftsmanship. So as an artist, that has been my full-time career other than motherhood for the past 10 years. And I have been pretty much working out of my garages before this place and then selling my artwork at art fairs and stores. I'm also in multiple stores in the area, my pieces. So kind of the next step for the growth of my business is to actually open up my art studio with a small gallery space, like when I'm working on my artwork. It's been a dream of mine for years, so I'm excited to have the opportunity to try to do it. That's about it. The barn is beautiful and it's perfect for like the size, and the previous owners have already partitioned part of the barn to be a workshop, so that I have converted to my workshop, and then the front half is the original barn, so very rustic, and that part would be the gallery.
There's a list of criteria. I might just go through all of them and talk about them very quickly. I think we can probably do it relatively quick, but I think it'll probably spawn some decent conversation. So this is from Chapter 250 of our code, 250-27.1. Generally, the purpose of the bylaw is to preserve existing detached barns, stables, and carriage houses built before 1925 and provide flexibility for accessory apartment types. Restrictions, the planning board acts as the special permit granting authority. We can grant a special permit to use detached barns, stable, or carriage house for either single-family residential use with an existing dwelling, provided all of the following conditions are satisfied. So there's a list of these conditions that are requirements. First, the barn, stable, or carriage house must have existed continuously since 1925. When converted for residential use, which is not the proposal here, structures...
This section A is accessory apartments. Section B is accessory uses. Which may simplify things here for you a little.
Thank you for saving me a little bit of time there.
Yes.
That's all.
As much as I'd like to hear you read bylaws. I did the same thing when I was reading it earlier, so
Well, that's interesting. Without hopping around, is there any, parking is one of the things we want to talk about. Is there any restriction to parking under B? Or is that only A?
sufficient off-street parking. B2,
Okay.
B.
Yeah.
So, purpose. Preserve existing freestanding detached barns, stables, carriage houses built before 1925, and provide flexibility for home occupations. Conduct of the following home occupations may be permitted under provisions of this section. It's the intent of the section to allow home occupations that are generally not allowed under Bolton's accessory use bylaw. The accessory use must be clearly incidental and secondary to the principal use of the principal dwelling unit or the permitted accessory structure. The existing component of a home occupation is that it does not detract from the character of the existing land use. So you're going to stay in the primary residence, that's going to be
Yes.
your house, you will live on site.
Yes.
Okay, a special permit from the planning board is required for home occupations, which are not allowed under accessory uses, section 250-21. Any special permit issued for a home occupation pursuant to this bylaw shall be subject to the following. The first, structure used,
I mean, would it be better just to go through this checklist?
that's the same thing, but sure, if you'd like to, it's easier.
Okay.
Structure must have been in existence prior to 1925. Any and all additions to the original structure must be in keeping with the original architectural style. What's your estimate as to the age? I know Mr. Bree's estimate's 1920.
I regret, Martha Remington, Chairman of the Historical Commission, I regret that I have not looked this up in the survey because it's such a beautiful home and the outbuildings and the property, everything about the Gates Farm is just wonderful. And so that's my amiss there. But, I mean, it looks in character with the farmland and the road and everything.
We did a little site tour today. I certainly agree with that. Sufficient off-street parking must be provided. Such parking areas must be in keeping with the character of a single-family residence. Crushed stone may be considered as an acceptable paving service. No more than 2 parking spaces shall be located within the front yard of the property. We looked at this. It looks like there's ample space.
It's existing, yes.
Okay. No external change which alters the residential appearance. Residential character of the premises must be preserved. All materials and products shall be stored only within the dwelling. All work or sale of goods must be carried on inside the building used. You've obviously checked off that you're in compliance with that. Based on our tour, it looked like that was the case. Based on the appearance today, that's generally consistent with the finished product.
Yes.
No exterior display, no exterior storage of materials, no other exterior indication of permitted use or other variation from the residential character of the principal building other than a sign as permitted under section 250. The code actually uses slightly different language, and I think the intent here is, number one, Erica, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but materials should not be stored outside of the barn itself. It should be stockpiles of steel or other art materials in clear sight.
Right, that's the intent.
And in talking with you, that's certainly not the intent. I questioned, and it doesn't seem to be the intent of the bylaw, but some of the language within the bylaw that makes it sound as though none of the finished product should be outside. The language in the bylaw makes it sound a little bit more like it should not detract from the existing residential character of the house. So I did 2 things, kind of taking a drive by. The barn itself, which has product inside, some product outside, is to me entirely not visible from the street. So I think that to the extent of satisfying the spirit of that section of the bylaw, I think it makes sense. You've got a couple of pieces that are outside that are visible from the street. To me, it doesn't look like it's any different than, like the bylaw
What
says,
any other
residential
person-
character of the house.
Yeah.
Something that you might have
I've had them up for a year.
at your house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one thing that would be kind of cool in keeping with the spirit of this paragraph is to do the sales inside of the barn, but it sounds like
Well, yes,
that's
yeah.
the intent of it.
Yeah.
So, permitted use shall be carried out by the person who resides in the principal dwelling, not more than 2 persons other than the residents of the dwelling, and not more than a total of 4 are employed at any one time on the premises in the permitted use. And you said you have
No plans on,
imminent plans, okay, on any employees. No equipment or process shall be used which creates offensive noise, vibration, smoke, dust, odors, fumes, heat or glare detectable to the normal senses off the premises. To me, I think helping with that is the fact that your barn is pretty considerably within the property, not at the
Yeah.
edge of the street,
And
probably a few
the-
hundred feet back.
correct.
Permitted use shall not allow shipments by vehicles not customarily making deliveries in a residential area.
Okay.
Who's showing up? Just FedEx here and there?
Yes, occasionally I'll have metal delivered, but it would be similar trucks.
Okay.
And in fairness, I've had things delivered off of the semi, so.
Yeah.
And I think that's the idea. Does this differ from the existing residential nature?
Right, and I think if it was consistent, if you're getting a semi delivery every couple of days, that might be one thing.
Yeah,
but,
no, maybe
if it
once
was-
a year if that.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it's normally smaller than a semi. Mhm.
No highly toxic, explosive, flammable, combustible, corrosive, radioactive, or similar hazardous materials are to be used or stored in the premises in amounts that exceed those that are typically found in a normal residential use. I hope we don't typically have radioactive materials. Okay. Occupied space for the permitted use shall not exceed more than, so what's the math here, Erica? The occupied space of the permitted use shall not exceed more than a third of the floor space of the living area of the principal dwelling if being used in accessory use to a principal dwelling. That's not what we're doing. It's the second half. More than a third of the floor space of the living area of the accessory if it's being used as an accessory use.
Right.
So is the math her gallery offering for sale can't be more than a third of the total floor area of the barn?
Roughly.
Okay. Barns, and you provided a nice little diagram.
Mhm.
Barn, stable, or carriage house and principal dwelling must be and remain located on the same lot. They are existence of safe vehicle access to and from the property. I felt safe. Existence of safe pedestrian access to and from the site. So what is this? From the residence, Erica, to the barn? Or is this pedestrian site along the road to the property?
Which one are you on? Existence of state parking to the...
1, 2, 3, 4, 5
Oh,
up
from the
from the
parking.
barn.
Yeah, because I mean,
Yeah.
when you're talking about pedestrian access, you're talking about when someone comes, parks their car, and
Okay.
then they walk. So it would be from their car to the
Okay.
barn.
Right.
I mean, that's what I would think.
That's how I
is-
read it.
Yeah.
Okay, and so a couple of things. I mean, it's certainly well within the lot, it's very safe. I think one of the things we put in the special permit, to the extent you're open in the winter and there's snow, you should maintain a
Yes.
walkway,
Yeah.
shuttle
That makes
walkway. Lighting, you commented on that. You commented on lighting in your write-up there, and it sounds as though hours of operation
Yes.
would be daytime.
Daytime.
Okay. Compliance with fire department requirements, local board of health requirements, state and local wetland bylaws and regulations. So, Erica, educate me on that a little bit. This goes to Mike for those items? Does it go to board of health or no need?
So as part of the special permit application process, I do send the application to all the various boards for comment and input. I received very little. Most boards were fine with what you were doing. The chief of police did have a request that parking all remain on the site, which was the intent anyway.
Yeah.
Sugar Road's a challenging road, so
Yep.
he just doesn't want to see
Mhm.
parking on the road. Mike Savaggio, also our building inspector, I don't know if you've met Mike.
Yeah.
He's also weighed in, and he said in order to meet the building code requirements, he will at some point need to do an inspection
Yep.
to make sure that, you know, in case you need, for example, exit signs within the barn,
Some
something
probably
like that.
some railings.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
that'll probably be conditioned in the planning board's decision that, you know, he'll have to do that inspection,
Yeah,
so.
that's great.
Application form that's included, filing fee, certified abutters list. We have that in here. Development impact statement, you provided one. It indicated all these items. Did you talk about bathroom facilities?
She did.
Yes.
Okay.
They're not included, right?
They're not.
Yeah.
Got it.
That's what-
I was playing photographs for plans. So to me, my biggest takeaways were hours of operation, daylight, is there lighting needed? We talked about that. Employees at this time, none other than the applicant. Snow removal and conditioning it based on Mike's inspection. I think it's a super use for the town, preserving the barn. I thought what you've done with the barn so far just looks awesome. So I support it personally. What do you guys think?
So just on your one comment, so will it only, and I apologize, I wasn't able to make the site visit, but I was reviewing the photos and everything. You said it's only gonna be open during daylight hours?
Yes. It's
So-
gonna be open, so I have 2 elementary age children, and that's when I work.
Okay.
And so I would probably have the majority of the hours, with the exception of an occasional Saturday, maybe a couple Saturdays a month that I open it to the public. But it would be typically like 10 to 4
Okay, I
through
got
the
you.
day.
I got you, okay.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome. It's great to make use of this bylaw and have the barn, you know, it's perfect with the culture of Bolton, and I have no issues at all.
I'm happy with it. That looked good.
I only have one last question, and I think the answer is no, but is there any ADA requirements? Because it's so small.
I don't think so.
I don't, okay.
If there
But that-
are, Mike would pick up on
Exactly.
it.
He would,
That
okay.
get covered
I
by
thought
that.
about that. She's developed a really nice walkway coming up to the barn. Will he want to see a ramp? Will he want to see a
It's,
guardrail?
yeah, it's all
I'll
based
totally yield
on
to him.
building.
Right.
Yeah, I'll yield to Mike as well.
Yep.
It
We
is
only need a
really-
ramp if it's steeper than 5%,
Okay.
but again, I know when you have really small uses, sometimes there are exemptions, so
Right.
Okay.
I'm just not, I'm always looking at bigger projects.
I'm not
so-
either, but that's where.
So
Mike
it may
comes in.
be an exemption.
Yep, yep, that's
Yeah, I
right.
just wasn't sure, but so, okay, so he'll,
They'll cover that.
Any thoughts from anybody in the audience? Any questions for us?
I just have a question, but it has nothing to do with this specific application. How long has this bylaw been in the books? Is it new or?
2013, I think. Jonathan,
Yeah, 20.
Jonathan, the expert on the bylaw.
I
I did draft it, but I don't remember.
It's like in your lifetime.
2015? No.
That's what it says on.
We modified
It's
it,
very new.
Oh, no, that makes
but
sense.
it
It
was
was
put in place.
modified
20,
2 or 3
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
We had some folks kick it around, kind of investigate it, come in with some informal discussions. But this is the first real live application.
What were their potential uses, if you recall?
Wedding.
She was gonna do like wedding
Yeah.
arrangements,
Right.
right?
The owner on the corner of Harvard and Main,
Oh,
the big White House.
Small
She was
events.
talking about a potential wedding place there, but I don't know.
thank you.
But yeah, so you're
Come to
making,
fruition.
you're making Bolton history.
Yes, that's good. That's exciting. Me too.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Martha Remington, I'm speaking for the Historical Commission. Ms. Caligashaw is on the commission. We're delighted with this initial use of this law, and I think it's a perfect fit. And I'll want to come over and see your shop sometime. And I think it's really heartwarming to see this happening. And it's a great property, and we wish you all the best
Thank you.
in your endeavor.
If you haven't been in the barn recently, you gotta check it out.
Yeah,
Come this weekend, she's having an open house.
Oh.
I am an
Oh.
open studio.
thank you.
Do a plug.
Exactly.
I'm allowed.
Get the locals. Your artwork's there too.
That's true.
Procedurally, my thought would be to seek a motion to close the hearing, and then as a follow-up, ask you to draft a special permit, take a look, we will take a look at it as a board at next meeting,
And then vote.
take a look at any tweaks if necessary, and then just take a vote.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay.
Okay. Move that we close the hearing.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Good luck, awesome, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Need a motion to Erica draft the special permit, or, okay? Move that we have Erica draft the special permit for the barn at 218 Sugar Road.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
So,
Is that from today?
no, it's for the next hearing, no, for the next meeting when they actually review the decision and then take a vote. And then at that point, I'll just finalize the decision, it'll get recorded with the current clerk, and then that 20-day appeal period starts then.
Okay.
Once that's done and completed, if there are no appeals, then we'll contact you, you'll get a copy of the decision, and then you'll have to record it at the registry of deeds to make it effective.
Sure.
Okay, and then during that time, that's when you'll want to make out payments to the Joe
Okay.
for the inspection.
So I'll wait till after that to do it. Okay. Excellent.
And then to get the inspection, you'll just want to do a building permit. application. That's what Mike had told me. So,
Okay, that's
but if you
great.
have any questions, call me or call Mike.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bolton One Solar Project, 125 Still River Road. It's our review and signature as to the revised decommissioning agreement. What is this? Effectively just a change in the trustee?
It was a change in the escrow agent,
Okay.
essentially the bank. So originally it was Cambridge Appleton Trust.
Yeah.
And I think they either dissolved or they were purchased by another bank. So they resigned as the agent. And so now it's Zion Bank.
Okay.
This was actually revised last year, but somehow it fell through the cracks and I never had the board actually sign it.
Okay.
So that's what we're doing tonight.
Okay.
You have a copy of the red line version. The edits are really minor. It's really just updating the escrow agent, updating some contact information. And I think they added some language about the original agreement and now this updated agreement
Okay.
essentially. So-
And we effectively, I'm not concerned at all, but we would have had the right to appoint an agent, but we can waive, we can yield that right.
And I think at one point we had an email exchange about that and you were okay with the
Yep.
developer or the previous escrow agent selecting the new one.
Yeah.
In which, that's what they did. I don't know if it was the developer or the agent, but they did select,
Okay.
obviously, the new agent, so.
Okay. Yeah, the funds are there. I mean, do you trust in the surety of the institution? Zion's Bank, for whatever it's worth, is a bank I've heard of. I've never heard of Cambridge Appleton Trust.
I've never heard of either.
So there we go.
So the second part of this, that actually just came up this week, or maybe it was last week. So it's up to the board to select what the investment will be. So that language is also in your packet. I unfortunately don't know a whole lot about it. I can reach out to the bank to get more information on what the differences between the money market funds are. I just don't know tonight.
Where's the list?
It's in the packet.
Direction and acknowledgement.
So that's sort of the second piece that's related to this.
No, it's the next page down.
Yeah, there's two to pick from.
Yeah, okay, so it's a money market account, or it's an institutional liquidity government, which is probably a bunch of bonds.
So I went back and I pulled when it was invested with Cambridge Appleton Trust,
Yeah.
what it was invested in, and it looked like half of it was bonds, half of it were CDs, and then a very small amount in a money market fund. So whatever that's worth, just to give some context.
It's de minimis return and de minimis risk, is
Yeah.
effectively what it is. I
Yeah.
can't really opine on which one of these two is riskier, other than to say, that's US bonds, and that's a money market account.
Probably backed by US bonds, so.
Yeah,
Bonds.
and we should make an election today?
It's up to the board if you don't feel comfortable doing it tonight. I know I'm throwing this on you sort of last minute. You know, you don't have to,
Can I review
of course,
the disclosures that they have,
of course.
and then do it on behalf of the board through email?
As long as the board is comfortable
You
with
guys fine
that.
with
Fine
that?
with that. Usually I just throw mine out without looking at them, so. I'll let you decide on that.
Cheapest expense ratio.
That's what it is, right? But I want to look at it. Yeah, yeah.
They don't list it on the.
And is there any real risk in either one?
These are actually
Do you
pretty
have a motion to let Dave choose?
That would be great.
Okay,
yeah.
I will make a motion that we allow the chairman to select which of the two funds the escrow for Bolton Solar One is placed into.
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So I'm not signing anything.
Not until you feel comfortable.
Okay.
Oh, we are signing the agreement as long as the board's okay with the red.
So the only thing I remember about this when we did it was like a timing thing of how many years and they had to decommission it. Is that this document? It's like-
Good memory.
It was something to do with like 20 years and or cost. I don't really remember exactly.
Well, this is to ensure that if and when it needs to be decommissioned, there's money to do it, even if they walk away from
Okay.
the project.
And we would determine, yeah, I think I remember now, it was like,
And
there was some percentage
yeah.
of the bond was some percentage of the cost of the facility or something.
So, yeah. something
Yeah, I
like
mean,
that.
it's, and I think it's one of the attachments that kind of breaks down
But that would all be water under the bridge.
It's
The
not,
money's
yeah,
there,
the money is already there, we have
Yeah.
like over
You release it when
300,000.
Well, I'm just saying, none of that wording or anything was
It
changed.
should,
No, no, it's
it
all
should be
the
who
same.
is the
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
beneficiary, what is their address.
The only
stuff like
thing that they did add in was the current amount that was transferred to the bank, which was like 303,000 or something. That's the only thing.
Oh, because there was already interest on it?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. This,
Okay, I have the.
$3,700 since we documented this. In a year? No, 1%, okay. Cool.
Do you need us to sign them?
Yeah, I have the sign sheet right here.
Talk about the bylaws.
wait, do you have to make a motion to approve it?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Okay, I move that we approve the escrow agent change for Bolton Solar 1 from Appleton, or Cambridge Appleton Trust to Zion Bank.
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Finally, your bank abilities come into play.
right?
It's taken 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it hasn't happened yet.
Finally useful.
Finally beautiful.
Very heavy signature. Mike? Very loud signature.
Subconscious.
One more. Very purposeful.
Says something.
Collaborative.
Yeah.
Just
Says
three?
something. I'm not sure what it says,
Yes,
but it says
thank you.
something. Walk us through the comments, Dave.
What's that?
There's a lot of comments here.
It's all old stuff.
Oh,
The
yeah.
new stuff is very new. I can summarize it.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty easy. So review potential bylaw amendments for annual town meeting 2018. We continue to talk about these, making decent progress. Cottage overlay district, there's a red line in front of you, and there are 3 changes, all consistent with our last meeting. Your ordering of C, section C, subsection 2, to kind of make it flow a little bit better.
Yeah, remember, yep,
It's the same paragraphs,
Yeah.
that's just a different ordering.
yep.
Yeah, that's good. Wait,
So the maximum permissible dwelling unit count shall be calculated by first going through the subdivision, adding the density calculator. Then it says B, not less than 2/3,
Yeah.
must be age restricted 55 plus.
yeah,
Then C, by means of example, here's the math.
yeah,
Then D was in there before,
yep,
gotta be 2,400 square feet or less.
yeah.
Last meeting, we talked about now it's only 1 or 2 bedroom houses, there are no 3s.
Yep.
So that's change
Yeah,
1.
interrelation of buildings.
Change 2 is the setback paragraph.
Yeah,
Erica just put it straight back in, so it's the old paragraph that was there,
yeah,
so that's flowing, it can go wherever, but I just put it right there, I think that made sense. And then F, if anybody doesn't like the wording, we can totally change it. If we don't like where it is, we can change that. But I threw in there.
that sounds good, right at the end, I like it.
So a cap, kind of a little bit of a
Yeah, we
text.
talked about
Circuit
that,
breaker,
yeah,
yeah.
I
A
think
circuit
that's fine. that's fine.
So there shall be a cap as to the maximum number of residential dwelling units developed in the town of Bolton pursuant to this cottage overlay district bylaw. The cap shall be 150 units. It's not really arbitrary, it's about 10% of about 1,500, I think 1,460 or so that we have today. I'm not married to the number, but we talked a little bit about 10%. I mean, 150's a couple projects,
Yeah, right.
potentially. Yeah.
Couple,
Could be three small ones,
yeah.
but it's probably a couple.
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
Those are the only three changes that I made. There are two discussion items that we've talked about before that we should put in here. And one is, we've been effectively just saying over 55 and kind of very generally defining what over 55 means. And I know there are somewhat standard definitions that other towns use. So Erica was good enough to pull a few. There's some good examples here. Did you print them for other people?
Is this-
Oh, I printed it,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah.
So we've got one from Stowe. You said Webster definition. I read
I
that. You said-
believe I had updated, that's the email you're reading?
Yeah, the old one.
Actually, the comparison
Read
that's in your
this.
packet is a little more detailed.
Ah, okay.
I did a little more research.
I kind of liked, well,
There's aspects that I like from each
right?
definition. I think there's certain things that we need to include, like, for example, to make sure that we're not being discriminatory, I think we need to make reference to Mass General Law and Fair Housing Act for sure.
At least one of them did that, right?
A couple of them do
Okay.
that. The-
Sudbury does it.
Yeah, so that's important. I think also what's important, because we're looking as people that are looking to downsize, potentially age in place, I think it's important to allow for the possibility of a live-in aid that may not be
Webster did
55
that.
plus. I think that's a great,
I love it. Stowe didn't do it,
Yeah.
Webster did. That's kind of why I gravitated towards Webster's, but you know, we can create our
Foxborough
own.
does it, there's a couple others that do that, and I think it's just another tool to allow someone to stay in their home.
Yep.
And that's the goal here.
It's the
so-
spirit of
Yeah,
55
just,
plus
it adds
all
that
day
little
long.
sentence, and their
Yeah.
spouse and or live-in aid.
Yeah,
Webster effectively says somebody's got to be 55. Somebody who
Yeah.
owns it and lives it's got to be 55. Then a spouse, and it on purpose doesn't say that spouse has to be 55.
Yeah, and I think that's good.
And I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Then Webster drags in the live-in home
And their
health.
nursing
And
care
there's some
provider.
provider, yeah.
So the language about discrimination, the home health aid,
Yeah.
I think those are two great points. A third one I was thinking about, some of these examples do it, some of them don't. And this is kind of what I was getting at originally. Do you allow for a grown child for a period of time? Some towns will say no more than 3 months in any 12 months, no more than 6 months in any 9 months. I think those are the two examples we found. I don't need it, but it's just something that we need to think about, because some towns do it and other towns don't.
again, I think it provides a little more
I
flexibility
think
if you're
so.
a
I think it would be-
grandparent and for
yeah.
some reason your grandchild needs to stay with you for a couple of months. I think it's good to have.
3 in every 12 months? No more than 3 months out of any 12?
Do we need to say that? I mean, it'll be the exception versus the norm.
It will be the exception, but towns will usually define it, and
I
as you
think
see
you
in
need,
this
I think you
example.
do need to define it, because otherwise it could just be allowed full-time. So, what was the other one you said? No
Well,
more
I
than-
mean, Webster is very clear, occupancy is restricted to,
And Webster says no kids.
yeah, they say no kids.
Stowe says children under the age of 18 may not reside in a dwelling unit for more than 6 months in any 9-month period.
I actually like that language.
6 and 9?
Yeah.
So then you're saying, because that's what really they care about is the school-age children.
No one
So-
under 18.
So over 18, if you have a deadbeat kid and they have nowhere else to go, then fine.
So Fair Housing Act,
As long-
Actually, no, I mean, that's not how you put it, but that's actually a very good point, because I wasn't thinking that, because you're right, if it's someone older,
Yeah,
and maybe they're not their caretaker, but they're staying with them, it's
Yeah.
not impacting the
Yeah,
school
who cares?
system.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, maybe they're stay there for 2 years,
Yeah.
just to get them, you know, for whatever reason,
Yeah.
but you're right, I think the point that we would want to get at is children under the age of 18
Yeah,
may not reside there.
Yeah.
I think this is a perfect language, no more than 6 months in any 9-month period.
let's go with it.
I like
What-
that.
what's up with it, why the 9-month period though? It's weird, but,
The school.
School year.
Yeah, to shorten it up,
Ah.
yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
But it lets them be there for the
Okay,
summer.
and then A. What's it, oh, AAN is.
It's what they call it, staff, yeah.
Abbreviation.
Please introduce yourself, sir.
Jonathan Keep, 14 Manor Road. 6 months is the school year.
No, it's 10 months. If you go September to June?
Okay. I guess I was thinking without vacation, it's 6 months, but.
No, but if, I mean, you're not gonna, like, if you go September to June, that's 10 months.
And so somebody could game it by putting, if they needed to cover a year, they could sort of argue, they weren't there the first 3 months, then they're there 6 months.
And it says,
And
But
then
it
6
says
months
within a
after it's
9-month period, so it's a
Mhm.
consecutive,
Yeah,
like,
when
you
does that
know,
9 months start and then?
so you can't be
Well,
like,
these are fluid, we don't need to
Yeah.
adopt them.
No, but it-
Different towns are doing different.
but it does
6 out
say
of
in
12.
any 9-month period, so you can't do like, okay, well, this 9 months, the last 6 months, and the next 9 months, and the first 3 months. So it says any 9 months, though. You can't ever have 9 months consecutive.
I think that's the,
Yeah.
that's the way I was
So-
thinking it.
So that's what pretty much is saying. You can never complete the school year.
Correct, yeah. You could only do 6 months, and
Yeah.
then you,
Right.
the next 3 months,
Yeah,
you can't do.
so that kind of, yeah.
So, Fair Housing Act inclusion, nursing care provider, and then Stowe's 6 out of 9 language.
Yeah, so basically doing the Webster and adding this children under the age of 18.
And the fair housing from
Where's the
Stowe.
Webster already has fair housing.
It does, yeah, it says over communities in the
Ah,
Federal Fair
good
Housing
call,
Act of
good call.
1988 and under.
So it's Webster and adding in Stowe's.
Just the children
Under
under,
18.
yeah.
What
Don't ever use the word senior, because that's just confusing.
What I would do,
Oh.
probably find a way to define it up front someplace, the first reference that we would talk about it, and then just refer
For
to
this
that.
definition?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
You
then
don't
just
wanna put
refer to
this-
it as a capitalized term through
Yeah.
the rest
Well,
of
you
it.
could just put
Or
out,
just add a definition section.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
However you
Yeah,
want.
add a
That's
definition
what a
section.
lot.
And then the other
Yeah.
thing I was thinking too that would be helpful, so say the owner dies, or it's foreclosed, or there is an involuntary transfer of the unit, it's nice to have a 2-year exemption where if that then goes to a child, that's obviously not 55, they have the time to then sell it to someone that would be qualified to own it.
That's,
So,
do they have something in here?
Sudbury has that language, it's actually the
Okay.
last sentence, and I thought that
Oh,
would
yeah,
also
in the
be-
event of death of the qualifying owner occupants of a unit, or foreclosure of another involuntary transfer of a unit in an SRC, a 2-year exemption shall be allowed if the transfer of the unit to another eligible household.
Yeah.
We just should be consistent with our acronyms. So just
Well,
These
SRC
Well,
is.
okay.
These are just specific to each town.
That's what I mean.
I literally
Let's make
was-
them,
yeah.
so that's fine,
Yeah.
but we should make sure
Oh,
we're not
definitely.
talking
When it
about
comes to what
that.
we're defining, because these guys are all defining communities, and we've already said it only up to 2/3, right? So we're allowing for.
We're defining 55 plus as a
Yeah.
term.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
not,
And so,
It's not the community,
Yeah.
it's the notion of what is 55 plus.
Right.
Because it begs the question, is it the owner, is it the resident, is
Yeah.
it 2 residents?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ambiguity.
yeah.
So we defined that, my other one was, same kind of conversation. I was saying 80% of AMI. And then we kind of got into the MSA being Worcester. We already defined that term in
In
inclusionary.
inclusionary, it's actually in the
Refer
back of
back
that
to that
sheet.
then.
That's what we're gonna do,
Perfect.
that's what I figured we could
That's
do.
easy, it's totally
on that sheet.
consistent
Yeah.
that way. We're not recreating anything, we already agreed on that, it just refers to
Completely
that.
agree, we should be
Yeah.
consistent, yeah.
That's all I have. I think we're getting pretty close.
So, this is the.
Oh, yeah, the map.
Yeah.
No, it's actually not many 10-acre
I know, I
parcels.
thought there would have been more.
Before we go to the map, I did have one
Yeah.
comment
Shoot.
under the standards of the bylaw. What does the board think about requiring a percentage of the units be ADA compliant? Because again, that's also something to think about if we're aging in place, having units that, if someone's in a wheelchair, if someone's in a walker. It's actually pretty important, I think it's pretty important. It
So
doesn't have to
40B
be a
under the
large
state
percentage.
will make you do that on all the units. So it's not out of the blue for us to think about, especially if it's only on a percentage.
Stowe does it in
Okay.
their overlay, they require 10%.
40B, it's a big deal. It's across the board, it's every unit. There are consultants that
Well,
work
I
with
mean, it
developers
is a-
just on this.
I mean, it is a private space, so if they don't have it, then it hurts their resale, doesn't it? I mean, is that something we need to have in there, or?
I think it's gonna
Well-
help the resale.
Well, that's what I'm
So,
saying,
yeah.
but I'm saying if they didn't put it in, it hurts their resale.
Oh, right.
So I don't know if you leave it up to them or if you put it in there, but I'm fine with, if you wanna say some
Well, the nice
percentage.
thing about putting it in there is
Yeah.
we're saying majority of these are meant to be for over 55.
Yeah.
And they should be responsible enough to make sure, and we want them to make sure that a portion of them are 88
Yeah,
compliant.
that's fine.
So
don't know, yeah.
I would think it would be good to put that in there.
What kind of a cost does it add?
It's significant.
Yeah.
But like I say, and this shouldn't be the litmus test, because every developer can go to the Commonwealth and do a 40B as an alternative. We want to be effectively a friendly 40B type of an option, or a friendly cottage option, call it whatever you want. 40B will make you do it across the board, and it is expensive. But developers who are doing 40B.
So what were the type of things you'd have to do? There'd be a minimum incline, no
There's all
steps?
sorts of stuff.
I mean, can you not have two-story places
You
then?
can have two-story places, but you have to have ADA accessibility to the second floor.
Right, you need
What's
So
that
you
mean?
need either an elevator or ramp.
No, so I don't think we should do it then.
But it's only for
Really?
10% of the,
Well, it could be whatever percentage
be
you want.
whatever.
It could
And-
be 1%.
Okay.
the other
40
option
across the
is
board.
it's not two-story, it's one-story. I mean, majority of over 55 people are looking for single-story
Yeah.
places because they don't
I mean,
want
I
stairs.
kind of think the market would take care of it. Personally?
I visited a senior housing development in Carlisle that was just recently built, and they had a percentage that were ADA compliant, and they were the ones to go immediately. I think it's
Ask them what
more
that percentage would
desirable
be.
than
Oh,
a lot of people.
it's, yeah.
And
Was
they're
it
hard to
single
find.
level or two levels?
That was, actually, that's a little bit different, it was an apartment complex.
So
That
when-
was
So you had
two. Yeah.
elevators
Yeah,
or something
I mean,
like
they
that.
all-
So there's no multiple floor units then?
Well, I don't know, I mean, I guess it could be, but it maybe
No,
not
it's
be.
apartments, so you have an elevator to the floor and then it's easy.
Yeah,
I mean, you're
that's
kind of
easy,
putting a
that's
restriction on like townhouse style units by doing that, you know?
Yeah.
Effectively, you probably are. Yeah.
I mean, if you wanted to do some small percentage just to make sure there was some single story units, you know, maybe, but I kind of think it's like a,
I think
Yeah.
it might be worthwhile to put a, like you said, small percentage.
A
And-
percentage of the 55 plus or
Yeah.
percentage of the
Right,
55?
Yeah.
right.
Of the 55 plus, because I don't think you need to do it of the,
No.
Well, if you can, find out what that project in Carlisle did, and whether it was a town requirement or a negotiation.
But
She said it was
that
an apartment
actually-
building.
that's gonna be
It's
different
not
because it's an
similar.
apartment.
Okay.
you know.
Yeah.
Like if it was a single floor house, I've got to imagine
you're
it's
fine.
much
You-
cheaper and much easier
Oh,
to
it's-
make it
it's-
compliant.
Yeah.
But once
Yeah.
you have two
I
floors.
mean, I kind of think that the market would dictate that and the developers would know it. You know, it's not like it's a public space that, you know, you have to set it up for all people, you know, it's a private space and if they are good developers, they would know what they need to put in, you know.
Does Crystal Springs have any that are, those are townhouse style, aren't they? Or at least two
I don't know the
floors?
answer to
I
that.
don't know if
I
they
don't
have
think
ADA.
that, I don't think they're necessarily accessible.
Joe?
And Jonathan Keep, 14 Manor Road. So I know at Bolton Woods Way, they retrofitted one of the houses. It was for a child, but they made it ADA, and they also built a bathroom. They
Okay.
expanded the bathroom, and, you know, no curb for the shower, so they could just wheelchair in. So I think it's a good, I don't think you can kind of rely on the market to do that all
But
the
still,
time.
this isn't public housing, this is a private
Oh,
development.
I know, but the whole idea of cottage and cottage overlay is that you're gonna have a lot of buildings that are one story potentially. And, yeah, so this kind of idea of, you know, townhouse seems very different than cottage overlay is kind of like what we have over on Sugar Road in a way. And I just wonder if the ADA is, you just need to have a bathroom and a bedroom that's accessible on the first floor, but you don't need to have accessibility to the second floor. That could be for a caretaker or a visitor. So I would just look into that definition. I don't
Oh,
think
yeah,
you
that's a
need to
good
have
point. That's a
an
good point. You made
elevator
that.
or a stair.
But you basically, I think you need to have like the master bedroom and the bathroom on the first floor,
Mhm.
and not necessarily everything on the.
And that's what a lot of those houses on Sugar Road have.
So if we did put something, maybe we should say something like 10% of the units are required to be single-story
Well, and I would
ADA
even say
compliant.
10% of the
Over
55 units.
Are required to be single-floor ADA compliant units or something.
You don't even need to say
You just
single
say-
floor, just say ADA compliant.
ADA compliant.
Because it sounds like you
ADA
could still be ADA
Yeah.
compliant
Yeah.
and be multiple floors.
Yeah,
I didn't even think of that.
I'd like to hear what,
Yeah, I'll do a little bit of homework, see
I'd like
what ADA looks like.
I'd
what
also
the
like to-
requirements are, what's the cost from a
what-
developer.
I'd like to hear what the costs are from the developer. And if, because the thing is, we don't want to put all these things in there, then it never gets used.
I mean, I will say, when you're starting up, the
Yeah.
costs aren't nearly as expensive as retrofitting.
Mhm.
Retrofitting
Yeah.
is a much bigger deal.
Right.
And if you're already taking that into consideration in designing some of this stuff, and you're putting the bedroom and the bathroom on the first
Yeah.
floor, I mean, to do some of this other stuff is just a little bit more. It's
Yeah,
I
not
will
much.
tell you though, as much as it can help with resale, because it
Yeah.
will attract folks coming in who have those needs and are looking at that.
It
unit.
diversifies the people that can come in, and it's.
But it can bite you in the butt too. It can hinder resale. There's a house, I shouldn't say where it is, there's a house for sale today in Bolton that was built with this in mind, and it's gonna have a hard time selling because it's just a smaller universe.
Yeah.
And that's
But
one-
someone could say.
That's one thing the developers are, they
Yeah.
don't want to shrink down.
Sure, yeah, sure,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, it's something to look into more.
I mean, I kind of feel like if I was a developer and I knew that some percentage would need this, then I would develop it. Or else you hurt your, because you want to sell the units.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I'd like to hear more sides of the story for that particular.
We done with that one?
Do you have a map?
We do have
Yeah.
it. We'll look at that. Yeah, let's
So
talk
you
about
didn't, you
that.
didn't do over 15 then, you just did over 10.
That should
Right.
go
This
with
is,
the
this
two.
is the
Oh.
start.
Tenth
This is the
grade.
start.
Oh, in the back this. oh.
Yeah, I have a spreadsheet for the over 15. So just a couple of sort of
Is there an extra
parameters.
one?
I think I have an extra one in my office. Let me grab it.
These are over 15?
No, this is
No, the
over
second
10.
page. But you don't have it on the map. She has a page with over 15. So it's 19 versus the other one being 27. Okay.
You opened 27 parcels to 19, 19
Yeah,
parcels.
yeah.
Yeah.
Either town meeting can do
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
For cottage overlay.
I had a 4 on that one.
It just lists who the owner was 50 years ago. and,
And just a couple of comments on the creation of this particular map. So these are parcels that are currently buildable lots that are vacant. I did include the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts in the map. I removed 1 or 2 parcels that did not have frontage along a road that abutted the town line, so it was pretty apparent that there was no way to combine it with another lot to create that frontage, so I removed those immediately. You'll see there are some parcels in there that don't have frontage, but I left them in there because at some point a developer could come forward and combine it with another lot, so I figured it's best to see, those lots as well. Chapter land got excluded, and then obviously the developed lots that are over 10 acres.
So the Hudson Road one, then where's?
Girl Scouts, Virginia.
No,
No, the one that.
the one we're looking at isn't
Oh.
in here
I
because it's.
didn't include it because I knew that it was originally, and I took it out because there's the 18 lot subdivision potentially moving forward, so
I would put it in.
you want me to put it in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we know what it is, but.
I would think of it, is what I should say.
And I took out the Forbush Main Street subdivision as well. I
Yeah,
did
that one's
in.
far enough along, yeah.
Okay.
21.6 acres, Golden Run, New England Power Company. That doesn't have frontage.
Where?
Where are you looking?
The 10 acres or more, halfway down the list. 6C 260.
Yep.
Yeah, again, some of the lots don't have frontage, but
Okay.
I left them in case they were combined with a lot that does.
Good call,
Um,
because it is adjacent to one, and I'm not
Right.
seeing that here.
Right.
It is big.
These ones right here? Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah. So no one can say that I'm biased here, just wanted to go right in my backyard. For the record.
So I think the next step is to also look at lots that have been developed that are 10 acres or more, because just like the the project on Hudson Road where there's the house, they're gonna, subdivide that. So this is a little bit misleading in the fact that we don't capture that currently.
Do you think there's a lot more?
I don't know at this point.
Have you took
I mean,
chapter land out?
ultimately, we
And
have.
I'm gonna leave chapter land out. I'm gonna assume that it'll remain chapter land. It's up to the board how you
Yeah,
want to
no, I think
present it.
I think that makes sense.
Um,
I mean, and these are just options in places you can go. We have the cap-ins, so it's not like we're looking at this and saying.
It's not all of them, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
It's,
but somebody with chapter land could pull it out of chapter if they got
Potentially
a
they could.
good price.
So for 10 acres, there were approximately 27 parcels, and then for 15, which I don't have a map for yet, there was about 19. Just for
I'm
development.
okay with leaving it as 10.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
With
mean,
the cap-in there.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you're missing two, and if you're not, I'm not gonna allow
Is that why you have your time capsule buried?
See, on the map of 10 acres or greater, that kind of landlocked, the one I was just talking about, New England Telephone? So to the west of that, but still on the east side of Golden Run Road, is a parcel, that's more than 10 acres.
Is that the one, it looks like with a water body? Is that the one you're referring to?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay, I'll double check that one.
it's like Gross Realty Trust, It's Betsy Cousin in the road.
Okay.
And then directly across the street from that, she owns that.
Jimmy, right?
Yeah, sure guy.
Are there currently any houses on there?
No,
Okay, I'll take a look.
good people. They're good people. To your comment, I have conflicts of that one.
It could still be there.
I'm sure
But
they are.
I think this map and the list gives us what we were looking for, which is,
Yes.
there are a variety of places.
Yeah.
I think with the cap in place,
Yeah.
not all these will be developed under this.
Is the
But
cap
it does
like
give a few,
150 units? Is it too big, too small? 10%.
I think that's good, because we're saying 2 or 3 developments at most, and then,
It's 2 or 3.
yeah.
Yeah, one with that.
How many did Stowe end up doing?
arguably is
Oh, they have more than that, though.
5 houses.
I mean-
No, they limited it to
10
have
houses.
it.
Well, 5 houses.
Is it
10
10
acres,
acres,
five
that one big
houses.
It was
house?
10% of
If you go
their,
Which then would be, if you go
population.
over 55, then
I mean, 20.
you're at 20. So you've got like 7 of these
Yeah,
on 10 acre.
yeah. But those are very small.
Those are as small as they get.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You want to make the cap 100?
Kind of.
Wait, explain that to
I
me,
know,
I
I'm kind of
missed
moving
that.
here.
So you're saying, so with the 10 acre minimum,
Is it too big?
they said it's 5 house lots.
Okay.
If you develop it, under the bylaw, if you develop it as all over 55.
Yeah,
Then you've got the 4x multiplier, so that 5 units becomes 20,
Yeah,
age restricted,
yeah.
So you got 7 of those before
which you
you
could
get
get 7 before you hit the
Yeah,
cap.
so maybe put it to 100.
But that's as small as they get, but 7's a
Yeah.
big number. So is it 100?
So should you change the cap to 100? I mean,
But in theory, if you do 100, that could be one big project.
Yeah.
yeah,
Then you're done.
I thought we had a natural limit of 60 or
No.
so, didn't we?
there
We're
are
just saying how-
Septic and-
I mean, you do and you don't. If you want to build a bona fide wastewater treatment plant, then you don't have a cap of 66.
Right.
that's how Stowe did it. They did a cap of 66 and then.
For
overall-
individual.
For individual and then an overall cap, I thought it was 10, but it's 6%.
6%. Okay.
6% of,
They're, I think it's
you want to per development cap of 66.
I don't care how
of the
many
total
are
number of
in
single family
So
dwelling
if somebody
units.
can make the economic argument that I'll do 100,
The Boy Scouts,
Wait,
that's
the
enormous.
total
This is different.
single-
but you still need the
In town.
treatment
Mhm.
plant, which has, but if you can.
so that number changes all
If
the
the
time.
numbers work
It
for you
does.
to put in a small packet plant and do 100, sure, go for it. Yeah, why don't we change it to 100?
Yeah, lower it. And then, you know,
And-
we'll, if we have one big one, we'll see what it's like and
We can come back.
we can
and-
move back to it. Yeah.
We can come back and raise some.
It's an
per
automatic,
project.
yeah. It's a built-in break to evaluate the
We
bylaw.
definitely need one, they're great, it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think you put it in, I check it out. But
Are we
it's smart.
modifying that to 100?
I think so.
All right, so we're keeping 10 acres, not doing 15,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
10 is good, and then where we said 150, we're gonna say 100.
Yeah.
There's also a highlighter here, do we already, we're good with 2,400 square feet of living space, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm good with that. Okay.
Should we talk about pot?
Did they have any comments? Do you have any comments on that?
Jonathan won't be shy.
Yeah, no, I do. So this type of development kind of pushes aside the whole phosphorus system.
It's an option to phosphorus, yes, yeah.
Well, but it's, you know, but it's based off of the traditional, so the number we take, so say the traditional zoning allows, say we said 10 acre lot, 5 houses, right? That's what you can get on 10 acres. So we take that number, and if it's over 55, you can get a density bonus of 4x. So you can have 4x dwellings, a max of 2,400 square feet, and a max of 2 bedrooms. And you can have like townhouse style, you know,
Maximum
Building.
of 6, right?
Attached or detached?
you can attached or detached, however you want to configure it.
But it's limited to 1 or 2 bedrooms,
Yeah.
no 3.
And we set a max of, do
I
we
think
say it?
6. Was it 6
Did we put that in?
attached? I thought it was 6
Or did we
attached.
leave that out?
I thought we
No.
left that out, I thought we did.
We left it up to the DRB, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
We did? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we added back in all.
Or
small
times
systems.
5, so 20 units on
Yeah.
10 acres.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Instead of 5.
Yeah, and they could be condensed, and it's not restricted to the lots. We have a spacing between buildings, but the DRB.
And there is an open space requirement too.
Yeah, yeah.
What is that? Because like with phosphorus,
The same.
you can
It's
get
the same, it's the same. I
Yeah.
think it was 30, I thought it was 30%.
We said 33%.
We talked about
33%.
25, we changed it to 33. You're effectively, you're looking at a residential lot, and you're saying, put forth a plan for traditional, the old-fashioned way, for traditional subdivision for phosphorus. And that's your baseline. Now, to that, you can do a 4x multiplier if you're doing all 55 plus. You need to, at the end of the day, do at least 2/3 55 plus. If you choose to not do 100% 55 plus,
Yeah, 30%.
the portion that's not 55 plus, you only get a 2x multiplier. So 4x is as dense as it could get, but under that 4x, it's 100% age restricted. The idea is for that parcel of land, whatever number of units you have, if it is 100% 55 plus, you're adding no kids to the school system.
Yeah. That's kind of the whole point of this. The whole point of this one isn't necessarily affordable. It's more to
It's affordable for everybody
Well, it's-
over
it
time.
diversifies.
It's to bring
It
down
diversifies
costs.
too. It
and
does everything.
and tries to help the average student per household. It tries to bring that number down by bringing in tax revenue without kids.
And there's argument as to what that number is today, how that math works. The reality is, this is super simple. This weights down whatever our numbers are today by a factor of potentially 0 kids per household for every new dwelling unit we create under this.
So it's 100% revenue.
But in terms of open space, how is it different?
33%.
Like with a conventional development in phosphorus, don't you get closer to 50%?
No, it's
No,
30.
it's 30 is required, it's
Match it.
33% is required.
Okay.
So this would require the same amount of open space. It does allow
Yeah, this is the.
some of the septic systems and the well fields to be within that 33%, which I think makes sense, but, so it allows some of those utilities to be within the 33%, but the ground cover would still be,
Didn't we get in trouble with that in Century Mill? The open space is owned by the town, but the well is owned by the community, and the septic.
Yeah, we talked about that last week to carve it out pretty much, to not be part of the open space where the physical well is, right? That's what we said last meeting.
no, I thought we were saying that it was all,
no, it can be in the open space, but that.
It won't get
but
transferred.
It wouldn't be eligible to be transferred if it's
So it's in the calculation, but it stops there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They own
The
It's
the.
in-
homeowners
The homeowners
association.
association.
It wouldn't get
owns
transferred.
Any.
Did we make
well,
that change in here?
Well, no, I think it's something that can be negotiated
all right.
during the special permit process.
Yeah.
I think that if they intend to put the utilities in the open space, then more than likely the homeowners association will own
Okay.
the open space.
Okay,
I think
yeah,
that's the
okay.
cleanest way to do it.
Right, so it'll be open space, but
Because they're gonna have to be able to maintain
Yeah.
Yes.
all of it anyway,
Yeah.
so there's no way it could be transferred to anybody else,
Yeah.
or anybody else that took it.
I would look into that, because that was a big thorny issue that we had to like.
Well, that was because he
unweave
wanted
and
to just say,
century mill.
here's all the open space that includes my well. You know, he wanted to just push it all to the town or the trust.
Right.
And it got hung up and people said, no, that doesn't, we don't want to be responsible for your.
What was his argument? He didn't want to pay taxes on it?
No, because it counted against his
it was
magnanimous,
the-
100 acres that he was giving to the town
Voluntarily.
voluntarily, yeah. Just ask him.
Yeah.
So maybe there should be a sentence in there that just makes it clear that
Okay.
all utilities will be owned by.
I like it. I
homeowners
think we should.
Yeah.
association.
Yeah.
Just so that they know
Because the
why.
reality
and-
is,
Yeah.
you'll remember, but I'm not going to. So I think that's smart.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Now should we talk about Bob?
yes. So you got rid of your leading pictures.
Okay.
So this is kind of in preparation of, do we put together a bylaw?
We have to put together a bylaw.
So what did we do? Last year, we did a moratorium. The
Yeah.
moratorium expires, we have to put together. a-
So if we don't do a bylaw, we're subject to, we have no local zoning, it's subject to whatever the state,
We can also put
So
it in.
it's not necessarily that we have to do one.
we just, we don't have any
We
local.
should.
We should,
Okay.
you know, if we wanna,
So, before,
if we wanna have any control over it, we should.
don't disagree. So before we start tackling what does a bylaw look like, we put together a one-page survey that will go out to the town to get a little bit of feedback. Do folks want to see this in town? If so, what will it look like? When does this go out? What are you thinking?
Within the next couple of weeks,
Cool.
probably. We're still working on getting the form created on the new website, so once that's ready to go, then essentially, you know, we can start sending this out. A couple of modifications since last time. I know there was a question on I had written down excise tax up to 3%.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
verified that, and it's actually not excise, it was a sales tax. And actually, in everything that I've read, they call it a local option tax. So I've updated this to just say local option tax because I want to be consistent with the readings that are out there.
Is it 3? Is it up to 3?
It's
Is it
up
whatever
to
you want?
3%.
It's up to
Up
3.
to 3%.
Okay.
So it allows municipalities to collect the local option tax about so that's of revenue? What is that?
Of
Yeah,
revenue.
yeah,
It's- I have
yeah.
the language. I
And then
can
the
send it to
second
you.
3% is,
It's the impact fee,
Retails.
She says it later, yeah.
community impact
Oh,
fee
oh,
paid to
oh,
the
oh.
municipality.
community impact fee. But you see here, of the establishment's gross sales. Let's see.
Well,
Yeah.
because that's based on it's paid to the municipality by the licensee.
So it's
of the gross
3%
sales.
of the gross
Yeah.
sales.
So you technically could get up to 6%,
Right.
the town could get.
I would, if you know that first part, we have an option to go local up to 3, if you know that's
I
based
know
on
it for
sales,
certain.
throw it in there then. Just-
Oh,
It is,
She
that
says
is,
up to
it is in
3.
here.
She
Oh.
says up to 3.
That it's of sales and not bottom line.
Oh,
It's a stupid nuance,
I-
but if you know
I
that.
know.
you'll
Here, let
get-
me just show you the language and then
Okay.
you can decide how you want to write it.
I'm fine with the rest of it, I think it's good.
And then I
And-
added the comment section based on
Yeah.
Brian's.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice, nice, nice.
Yeah.
There's at least one of the legislators that's pushing to make so that part of the tax that the state collects would only go to cities that
Participate,
that participate, yeah.
That's how it should be.
All right, so
You know?
here's the section of the law that talks about
I'm not a NIMBY fan over
the
here.
sales.
Wait, so Bolton would,
Thanks.
so 3% goes to the state and 3% goes to Bolton? The excise,
Yeah, so it's sales, I just throw that in there.
the community impact fee goes to the state then? And then each town can go, so it's not like we get 6%, 3% goes to the state, and the town can get up to 3%. Is that what it is?
No, isn't
No,
the
it's
community
6%.
impact fee, that's a local fee.
I would
Okay.
think it's a holiday.
There's
Okay.
also
It's got a pretty crappy name if it's not going to
Okay.
town.
Well, so none of that percent, so all 6% can come to Bolton then? Huh?
Right.
Okay.
That's how I read that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because it's not, the community impact fee is not a
That's,
state.
quite frankly,
so-
the argument. It's the argument that gets me.
Yeah, okay.
They must have changed that. That wasn't the original.
Really?
I don't think that was the original law.
Yeah, I don't think that second 3% was in there. It was just the first one.
I heard somewhere that they're, some towns are able to get up to 12%. What was that late?
I don't know. I haven't heard
Like
that.
I was,
A cottage density multiplier. Multiple A's.
because I heard something, but it, and they're talking about how it wasn't in the original law.
We need
Like that
20%
percentage was not in the original law and that it's changed.
Did we get any clarification on if we could ban it, considering the town voted for it?
Yes, we can prohibit it. It takes a certain process.
What's the process? Is that anything?
I'll get the language for
But
you.
if
I
we,
just don't
but
remember.
if we wanted to ban it, if
I
the
believe
town
that-
came
I
back
believe
and
that's an option.
the majority of people didn't want it here, we could
I believe
ban
that's an
it.
option, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Pro-Business.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think.
Picking winners.
I take each case as it comes.
If I remember, if the town had voted it down originally, I think the selectmen could
Okay, it's
ban
an
it.
easier
But
process.
if the town approved it, then it has, the town meeting has
In
to.
our town, overwhelmingly, like in the 60s.
No, it was almost 50-50.
Was it really?
No, it's the vote. Right, the
Yeah.
vote?
The vote.
Yeah.
The vote, yeah.
Was that close to 50?
It was close. It was pretty
Maybe
close.
55,
Maybe in the
45.
state.
Something like that.
Maybe
It's
the
like-
state
I thought
was
it
in the
was, yeah,
60s.
It was like
55,
55,
Something,
45.
yeah, close enough. It was,
Okay.
it
But,
wasn't like it was.
so you're saying if we
70-30.
did choose to ban it, then the town meeting would have to do something special?
Town meeting would have to be the one, so if the town had, if we had originally voted it down,
Yeah.
then the selectmen, following the will of the people, could say, we're gonna follow
Okay.
that and ban it. Since we approved it, in order to ban it, it has to go back, it has to go to town meeting.
Well, this would be going
But
towards
I-
town meeting
I
anyway.
Right, right,
believe
right,
Even
right.
more than town meeting, it also
Or
needs to be a
is it
ballot
ballot
question
vote?
on the
Okay.
election.
It could be,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but
So it'd be
it's,
both,
it's
yeah.
kind of saying, okay, did
Are
the
you
majority of voters really change their mind?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
You know,
Okay. That makes sense.
you know, as opposed to,
Was
as
that the
opposed to
original
selecting
law?
over. No,
How can they retroactively change what, based on how people voted? That seems
if you
weird.
don't like it, sue them.
And then did the board want to put this out for 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
I would,
You liked quick last time.
I say quicker the better, because honestly,
Yeah,
no
just
one's gonna
ends.
look at it after 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
two.
So my intent is to try to get it in the Bolton Independent. I did reach out to Bolton Printing. It's like only $150 to print 2,000 copies, so that's not the
And will the
issue.
independent put it in?
Well, they put it in for a fee, so they're gonna get back to me on how much that costs. So I'm a little worried that that's gonna be expensive, so I'll
Yeah,
let you
we've seen
know.
that with the EDC.
I think that's the best way to get
They
this
charge
out,
you?
along
They don't
with the
give, they're not
website.
good at giving breaks.
Hey, commerce, free enterprise, EDC.
Well, when you say you were gonna put
With the
this in the
market.
Bolton Independent, are you just gonna put like
It's
a
a
little?
flyer.
Oh, as a flyer, because I was gonna say you could just put a small little
Yeah.
blurb about it
I
With the
could,
link.
and
so
say, go to here to
Yeah.
take the survey.
that'll probably be the second option.
Yeah, if it's really expensive,
To do the
okay,
flyer.
okay.
So what would it cost to just mail that
That I don't
as a
know.
flyer?
That's probably gonna be a lot more expensive.
And you're gonna get
Well,
the
it depends on what the independent charges.
Yeah,
but-
so we'll find out what that
Well,
is.
don't, as a town, don't we have some type of bulk mailing system?
I think it still costs the same.
Oh, it costs the same.
Yeah.
Well, let me, Jonathan, when you mailed out your campaign flyer, how much did that cost
I think it's like $500 to do the general mail.
to
Yeah.
print and mail it?
Not print, just,
Okay.
just.
So
mail.
it's 150
He
to
put the kids to
print
work.
and another,
Yeah, that's outside my budget.
There's a thing called Every Door Direct, did you do that?
Yeah, that's,
That's by zip code, it's a discount for zip code, I don't think you did.
oh, yeah, we didn't have to because it just went to every mailbox.
Are you gonna make people sign their name to it?
No.
Anonymous?
That'll be anonymous.
Yeah, that's
So,
good.
So you can get all your friends.
stuff the ballot box.
You gotta be checking IP addresses.
10,000 responses.
How's that possible?
Luscious.
Oh, jeez, all right, let's not go there.
Do we need to talk about congregate living? Has anything
Not at this
changed?
point, because I haven't done any further research on
Okay.
it, so.
Eric? What about the,
Well, we got an agricultural business
Yeah.
bylaw. Well, what's changed? Nothing's changed. I mean,
Which one are we in?
agricultural business bylaw.
Yeah, that one,
Where
I
are we at with
haven't, I
that?
haven't done anything more with that
Yeah.
since last time. We were looking at whether or not to do 5 acres versus the 20 acres, and then expanding upon the allowed uses.
Yeah.
And we
I
got a
mean,
little bit stuck,
Yeah, we got
so.
stuck. Go, switch. Pass. Parking bylaw. So, man, I read this thing and it gave me a headache.
Really?
I
That was
mean-
not the intent.
Well, it's just so much. I mean, I know you like base this off of something else, but I think we should start from, I don't know.
Do you want me to go through my comments?
Yeah.
Can I ask,
Yeah.
which one did you base this off of?
This is Stowe's parking plan that I felt was very detailed.
It was, I
Complete.
mean, yeah, it is
They
complete,
touch
that's for
on a lot of
sure.
important topics like shared parking if you have a mixed-use properties, like
Yeah.
the mixed-use village overlay, so
Yeah.
that's something we want to look at. They touched upon off-street parking, which again, I think is something we want to talk about.
Yeah.
They talk about public parking. I mean, there's a lot of things that,
Yeah, it was
I know
all
it
project.
seems like a headache, it seems like a lot.
Yeah.
I can tell you
but-
this is very similar to, I look at zoning bylaws all the time with different towns.
Yeah, well, so, you know, I said that and I was like, there's no way this could be what Stowe's was, and I was like, oh my god, this is, I was like, okay.
um,
But like you said, I mean, it did touch everything we were talking about.
Yeah.
So just so, I mean, the audience knows. So our current bylaw is kind of very static in the amount of spaces a place would require. For instance, I mean, just use an example of the Cracker Barrel, or the, you know, if it's an office. So it has, what, 2,000 square feet?
a little less than that, I don't know the exact number.
So the current bylaw would require there to be 6,000 square feet of parking, right? Is that how it,
Well,
it's
so-
3 times?
For retail,
For retail.
yeah.
So it's 3 times the amount. You know, and we worked that out to be what, like 18 spots? The 6,000?
Mhm.
So I mean, it makes no sense that a small little shop like that would require 18 parking spots. So we wanted to be able to,
No, that's like 37 spots.
oh really?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think you can even fit 37.
Well, actually, no, I guess you gotta take into the aisles, that's what, so you're
Okay.
probably right, it's most likely to, yeah.
Yeah. So we were trying to bring those numbers, and we looked at all the other towns, and they're all much lower. So I think still, what did they say, 250 square feet requires a spot?
So just for an example, like, let's use 470 Main Street, since I actually did the calculation.
Okay, that's good, yeah, that's the same
For
size.
Bolton, we required 25 parking spaces.
Yeah,
If we look at Stowe and Berlin, they only require 13. If you look at Foxborough, they required 17. If you look at Massachusetts Smart Parking Model Bylaw, as well as Lincoln, they required only 10. So we were
Yeah.
definitely far and beyond
right.
all the other communities.
So our parking bylaw makes no sense, and it requires people
Especially in a
to.
rural character.
Right, it's like, you want, so what did you say, it was 25 spots?
Yeah,
And like, they want it in front of the building because you require the 150-foot setback, so it makes no sense for
it's
New
more,
York City.
adding more impervious than we need.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we were trying to bring that down, and then we were trying to even potentially talk about shared spots for mixed use, and even if we had like some public parkings, you know, if you can off-site some of your parking, allow some parking to be off-sited, if there's like a public space.
Yeah.
I mean, just if you think of like, not that we're Concord, but if you think of Concord, there's, you know, they have like the public parking lots in the back.
Or just
Yeah.
even parking along the street,
Yeah.
allowing them
Yeah.
to take advantage of what's along their frontage.
Instead of having to create all this paved parking. which looks horrendous and you may not even need.
And the way that the shared parking works, you look at peak demand. So if you have two non-competing uses, they can have shared parking because let's say one use has peak demand in the morning, one has, demand in the afternoon. They can share those parking spaces. They don't necessarily need their own separate spaces.
And that's great for when you have mixed use.
Exactly.
That's the whole point of it.
I mean, it looks better, the town like it better, it's better for drainage.
Yeah.
It's,
Oh, yeah.
and then it's also better for the developer, it's one less thing to worry about.
The off-street parking you have within 500 feet?
That's, I just highlighted it. It's whatever you guys want it to be. If you think it's,
Off-site parking, yeah.
Yeah.
when I looked at the Mass State model, they were like, I think they said typically it's between 350 and 1,000 when they reviewed other towns.
Okay. I typically say it's 300 feet, but I mean, it's not tied to anything, but.
So the next thing in the list was Stowe's parking schedule.
Hold on, we're not quite there yet.
Oh, okay, well, you just asked me a question about it, so. I was just, and there is a blank in there. I'm just saying, so there's a big blank chart in there.
Yeah.
That chart would be filled with this parking
Yeah.
schedule, which says this particular type of business requires, so if you look at business, it says retail requires one space for each 200 square feet.
Potentially. I gave you two options of how we could do that.
Yeah.
So Stowe has, a lot of communities have a straight number. Okay, you have this use, this is how many parking spaces you need.
Yeah.
If you look at the smart parking model bylaw from the state, they give a range, so it gives the board some flexibility to work with
Okay.
the developer on actually determining what that requirement is needed for that particular use. So if a developer really knows what they're building and they say, I don't need that many, I need this many, the
Yeah.
board has the opportunity to approve that. I like that.
Well, that's
approach.
actually good too, because you said that they came up with 10 spots for 470 versus
Yeah.
17 or whatever.
Yeah, that's interesting, yeah. I haven't really come across that.
Which one is 470?
Next to country covered.
Okay.
The future. So it would be interesting, so 470 and Country Covered are technically on separate lots, right? So in our current parking bylaw, they would require each to have their own set of lots, but with your shared,
They actually do share some parking, but it's only because country covered didn't need the spots on the side
you know.
or something like that. I can't remember exactly,
yeah.
but there were a
But
couple
with the
of
shared portion, maybe they, you can be more dynamic with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where they'd have a kind of common lot.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it makes total, so the 470 and the Country Covered is, they're gonna kind of create a courtyard kind of feel, where they're not adding a driveway for 470 Main Street, they're just gonna use the one that's there, and then you can go left to the 470 or right to the Country Covered. So it makes sense to have kind of, like you said, shared, if Country Covered is more of a day, and if 470 has like a night restaurant or something, wherever their peak hours are.
Is there a reason why, typically parking is your minimum? This one has a maximum?
It gives a range.
So where are you looking?
Oh, well,
Danielle, what are you?
I guess,
Looking at the
I'm looking at the
smart
smart parking,
This one.
and I'm just,
Oh.
I'm wondering why there needs to be a range. I mean, why wouldn't we just take the minimum? I mean, if they want more, they can provide more.
I think it gives the board more information moving forward, because if you only see the minimum, you may not necessarily see what might be required for a particular use. Like, this kind of gives you more information saying, okay, this, this shopping center could potentially use this many, or it could use this many.
So,
Whereas, I don't know.
But it is setting a cap on it.
It is.
Yeah, I guess that's why I was,
so 470 would be what, freestanding retail?
Sure.
Yes.
So the minimum is 1 per 1,000,
over 1,000 square feet of gross floor area.
and the max is 3 per?
3.
So how'd they come up with the 10 number then for 470?
I think I used the max. I didn't use the minimum.
So 470 will be like 3,000 something square feet,
Yeah, I used the max, so it came out to be about 10, maybe 9 point something.
and a minimum of 3 spots, which that doesn't make sense.
Right.
I think we could get rid of you could have the minimum.
No, because that's all that anybody will assign to them.
That's what I'm worried about.
And there's no conversation
Yeah.
about, why do you think you only need
Well, that's not what the design, but it has to come, there's a special permit here, you know, so they have to have a plan,
Right.
you know. I mean, 3 spots for that didn't make sense, but you know, maybe this, what I'm saying is this minimum seems low, you know,
It
so
seems
maybe.
really low, it seems
Yeah,
very low.
yeah.
Well, I mean, but if that's an art gallery, where you may, you know, where you're only expecting to have 1 or 2 customers there at any given time,
Yeah,
you know, then 1 is probably plenty.
yeah.
You know, one for the barn that we just approved is probably.
What were you just saying?
Yeah,
Would be, you know-
You're just counteracting what you just.
No, I'm saying, so that you're saying the 1 sounds low.
Yeah,
But I'm saying, you know, for a business where you expect relatively little walk-in traffic,
That barn,
then that 1
my thought was
becomes.
2 or 3.
Well,
I think 1 would be insufficient for that, and that's a teeny operation.
possibly. And I think she said 2 or 3.
She did.
But if you have a business has marginal retail that's mostly mail order, 1 may be plenty. You know, but,
so you're kind of going against what you just said, though.
no, I'm
You're
saying.
saying people would design toward the minimum.
People, I mean, if you're a developer and you want to, you know, you want to do as little as you can.
Well, that's.
But this
I mean,
would require a special permit, right? So, I mean, they'd have to have a plan.
Yeah, but by having by putting the range in, I think
Yeah.
Erica's point is that forces us to have the conversation of, well, why do you think it's only 1 and not 3?
I got you. Okay.
I'm just a little worried that, exactly to your point, I mean, typically the parking is created as a minimum for developers to say, you need to provide at least this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to make sure that it's covered for
Yeah.
use, so you've got enough spaces. And I'm certainly, I don't want to be creating extra spaces at all.
Right.
But I am a little concerned with just seeing this and just saying, coming in with that no matter what. With the developer, just, and somehow rationalizing that. I don't know.
I'm fine with going with the stove plan, too.
Would you like it better if it said minimum and typical?
No, I like give it one number.
They're all hard to schedule.
I like the
Yeah.
one option only, but, and,
I mean, I'm okay.
Jonathan?
So you're arguing, the case you're making for this is that you want to provide an opportunity for businesses to have less parking
Yeah.
and not to fill the town with asphalt. But
Yes.
then you're saying,
I know, I'm saying two different.
then there can be too few spots
Yeah.
and we want to let people make as many as they want. So I think it's important, you want to be able to have the Cracker Barrel have 3 spots
Yeah.
if possible. And you want, so I think it's a good to have
I mean,
a
we definitely
spread
don't
there.
want to make them have 17 spots or whatever ours.
So you like the range, you like having a range versus
Yes,
a.
as a starting point, somebody can
Yeah,
make
right,
the case.
Right.
One other thing, is there any language in there about parking being hidden behind the buildings?
Oh, in the bylaw.
There isn't, but that's because, other parts of the bylaw kind of prevent that. Part of the mixed-use overlay was to bring the buildings forward and the parking behind,
Yeah, I
and we
know.
specifically stated that.
Yep.
But with our 150-foot front setback from the front, I mean,
But you're changing that, so I'm just wondering if
Well,
there's any language in there about.
this
moving
particular
parking.
bylaw doesn't change that, but I would like to change the front setback, but that's a different bylaw.
This is purely change, right now, it's some number of square feet of parking per 1,000 square feet or.
So we
building.
obey it,
Okay.
It's very, yeah.
Square feet to square feet instead of spaces to square feet.
Yeah.
So in terms
I've
of the
never
design
seen it.
requirements, I do state, I reference the design review criteria quite a bit.
Good.
And I do reference the section that talks about the parking being on the side or in the rear. I don't
Okay.
specifically
It's
call it out,
preferred.
but I reference to
Okay.
that section.
Cool.
So,
Yeah, and you're right, if you want to change the setback, that's a different matter.
Which I think, and looking at, we're not getting to coverage now, but, looking at this, our setback is 2 or 3 times bigger than any other town, pretty much.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 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 we'll come back to
I
that.
mean, the bylaw,
Commercial
you basically say we can change anything we want to,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
Although it says the
This
Board
is-
of Appeals, is it
This is
Susie
just
Planning Board or?
no, so there, that's
Zoning
just,
board?
again, another kind of tool in the toolkit if you guys want to provide for some flexibility. So there is an option in here that says, you know, an applicant coming forward could get a special permit from the zoning board of appeals if, under two options, they need zoning relief if they were a pre-existing non-conforming use and then become a conforming use, but they don't have the parking requirement to do that, then they could go to ZBA to get that approval. Or if it's a conforming use that wants to change to a different conforming use, but may not have the exact parking needed, again.
If they don't meet our minimum requirement,
Right,
yeah.
they could then go to ZBA and say.
So if they don't meet this minimum requirement, yeah.
Right, but again, it's a special permit process, so they'd have to prove that
Yeah.
whatever they have for parking is, you know, sufficient. But again, we don't need that, like, these are just all sort of ideas, you
Yeah.
can toss any of them out that you don't like.
And so, yeah, then the other thing, we talked about shared spots, and we talked about off-site spots, which I'm thinking about, like the antique store or something like that, you know. We now own the common, and we own the parking spots in the back there,
So
so
it's whether or not,
I don't see why we couldn't count those spots in the common as common spots, you know.
if it's within whatever setback
Right.
you establish.
Yeah, 500
If
feet
that's
or
the
whatever.
direction you wanna go, so.
How many spots are there?
In the town common?
20?
I think it's like 20 or so. You know, I mean, in an everyday, you know, normal use. I don't know, maybe it'll change if they get a playground or something, but no, you know,
It's not full. It's used, but it's
Yeah.
not full.
yeah.
And then the other option in here, which may not really be applicable to Bolton, is a fee. So some towns do fee in lieu where they do have public parking. And then if they want to take
Yeah.
advantage of accounting, using that public parking towards their count, they don't have to create the parking, and then they give a fee in lieu for not having to develop it. And then that money goes into a fund to then create more public parking.
So instead of,
In our town's landscape, though, that might not be the worst idea.
Where do we have?
I know.
So-
Memorial Field, I feel like could be expanded upon, the parking there. The town common can't really be expanded, I don't
Yeah.
think, but.
Yeah.
Depends on what we want to do with our open.
well, I was,
some of the
you know,
open
I was
space.
thinking of Memorial could be common parking as well. I mean, when there's games, it's full, but every other time there's nobody there, so. And that's town-owned,
Yeah,
all the parking, yeah.
get the traffic up 117. I mean, in theory.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good idea in terms of like, you know, we know what our parking is like on Main Street now. It's not really marked that well, but money like that could be used to create, you know, paint spaces, make a safer parking, kind of pedestrian experience related to those businesses. So I think it could be a good idea. We could create pedestrian islands so it's safer. The cars, people in cars don't feel so vulnerable. So I think that's a good idea.
Why do you say no?
Because, I mean, well, I mean, we have very little space to begin with that would be even eligible for public parking. And like Memorial Field,
Okay.
yeah, we could take the parking there, improve it. We'd also need money then for a sidewalk to bring it down to, you know, because what's there is either non-existent or not safe, and certainly is not compatible with any standards that are out there right now.
You have to walk in the street.
Yeah, which,
Yeah.
yeah.
So this would probably have
so-
to coincide with some of the complete streets.
Yeah, that should have to, yeah.
Yeah.
But we may want to do that anyway for that space, for that area. I just think that it's, you know, kind of shirking their requirements. And it does, I mean, and if, you know, trying to think if we're you know, if Classic Pizza decided to get repurposed and redo all their parking, they said, well, I don't have enough space for what I really need now, but I'll just pay a fee and, people figure out how to park somehow. And then we just,
Because then
whether
they
they're
end
gonna
up-
park on the street,
Right.
at the school, at the,
Yeah, there are areas of
It's-
town where it would be a total disaster.
Right,
I'm thinking
and-
about
and I-
downtown, but that's not.
I mean, again,
the
it's,
spot.
it's at the board's discretion, right, so.
Right.
yeah, I just, we already, in the proposal here allows, basically 50% of your parking to be in public parking facilities. Or that's the proposal here.
Or at least 50% needs to be on site.
At least 50% needs to be on site,
Yeah,
or not non-public parking.
that's what it says, yeah. But then there is the comment saying, that number is based off of how many public spots. And so, maybe that's really like 70% in Bolton, or I don't know what the number is, but.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't mind taking out the fee in lieu just to make this thing shorter. It's
Well,
just,
fee in lieu is one line, so.
well, I thought there was kind of a whole section, no?
No, it's just
I
one
just had a
line.
question mark next
Yeah.
to it,
Oh.
whether or not
Yeah.
I wanted to.
It's gonna.
Well, then like
delete
off-street
one line.
load, this whole off-street loading area and all this and stuff.
No, I think you need the rest of the stuff.
But that's nowhere else, that's nowhere else in the bylaws?
No, these are parking design requirements, and it's
Huh?
these are just parking design requirements, and it's very helpful for a developer coming in,
Yeah.
knowing how.
They don't exist today, but,
But it's helpful to know some of those dimensions, which are
Yeah.
not gonna change, it is what it is.
kids, the bigger it gets, the more people get scared of it as well.
Yeah, the people that are going to be doing this
Yeah, people like me.
have real engineers that.
Right.
Yeah, we're talking about.
No, I'm talking about the town. I'm just scared that if it gets too big, people are just like, I can't think about this, vote it down, what's hidden in here type thing.
And bottom line is we're updating what was there since
Yeah.
'87 to hopefully reduce the amount of pavement
Yeah.
in town.
Well, also to just make it more accurate, right?
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is great.
So then the question becomes the table in the middle here.
Yeah.
Go with still, go with smart parking, go with,
Like Mike just said, this is pretty crazy list. You have to go through every single thing.
Well, what I would do, this is just an example, I would take our schedule of permitted uses.
Yeah. Just
Translate
overlay
that
it,
into
yeah.
a parking
Okay.
schedule.
Yeah.
Obviously, this doesn't totally apply to Bowling.
Yeah. Could you put it right in the table of uses?
No, it should be under the parking bylaw.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Can I just ask,
Yeah.
your table here, you have parking stall width,
There?
on page 5?
Oh, yeah.
Where did, this
I
seems
got
odd.
that from the model bylaw again.
Usually you give a width and a length, like a typical space is 9 by 18. So your width would be 9.
Maybe
for a
I
nine-
transposed it incorrectly.
Yeah, I would just,
I'll double check it.
So what are the angles? 45%, all the cars parked like this at an angle?
yeah, so typically 90 degree is a normal space, and 60 is slightly like this, and then 45 is really. Yeah, I guess you could do 75 too, but I would check that, because typically you would list a width and a length. And your 20 feet's kind of long for standard space, but.
Yeah, I'd probably transpose, wrote it in.
So that's just for, that's
Yeah, I think
I'll-
these
I'll
are
double
lengths,
check
these are
that.
lengths, I think these are lengths that are listed,
Yeah.
but I think we should also list the widths
Yes.
as well.
Yeah, with the length.
Yeah.
I was wrong. I probably owe you $5.
Going with the smart parking would at least make it shorter.
So that's just the table though.
Well, just the table, but it's better than 3 pages of table in the middle of it. Whatever we have.
Oh, this is two tables versus 2 pages. Well, it's still both 2 pages.
Yeah, just because it starts at the bottom. What is the second page? So this is bed and breakfast, personal services. 3, personal. 3 KSMs. Do we need to do Churches. I mean, do we need to do churches and schools?
Yeah, we've got them.
Okay.
This is killing you, Eric, isn't it?
I'm just trying to make it more easily digestible if possible, but.
Yeah, this
Not,
isn't,
not all government can be done by tweeting.
I would say that, looking at this as a,
Multiple tweets, dot, dot,
Dot,
dot.
dot, dot.
Yeah,
I will say
Dot, dot,
as a designer who looks at this type of stuff, this is very easily
right.
to look at.
Well,
It's-
so
it's
I always
straightforward.
envision every time I go in front of Brad Cody, and he's like, what, there are all these pages, like, I was like, I can't even read this, like, that's just what I envision people saying, like, and just, you know, getting nervous and just voting on.
He's thinking more of the town meeting and less of.
Yeah.
Understandable, but I would say as a designer,
Yeah,
this
it's important.
this
Okay.
is straightforward, it's very easy to read.
Mhm.
Look who just volunteered to present this.
Yeah.
Oh boy, that's okay, I can talk about parking.
Yeah. Okay.
You just don't learn about that, be intimidated by Brad.
I mean, I'm not intimidated by it, I
so
just
did you
want to make
make
sure
a
it
decision,
passes.
range or a number?
I don't think we
The
did.
number, you know, I can always do a comparison on the numbers with various towns, and then we can make a decision on that number. I did talk to Jesse Stedman, who's the planner in Stowe, because I wanted to know, since we're thinking his bylaw, what he thought of it, and he said it's worked out well. He did think that they actually require too much parking.
Well, so
And
his.
they will probably be looking to reduce it too.
Yeah, I was looking at the number for retail, and it's like 200 square feet for a space. So I think it probably should be like 300, 400, 500, something like that. I mean, if you're just thinking, even if you're thinking Cracker Barrel, which is, say, 2,000, so that would be 10 spots that you would require still. I mean, I don't know. If it-
Maybe if we could look at some
Maybe it's
of the other
250.
towns.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, I can take that analysis I did originally, and I'll just kind of add it into the schedule, and you guys
Yeah.
can just compare.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would be good.
I'm not quite sold on smart
Floor
parking,
area.
although I like the concept, but part of it, I know, I'm saying.
Gross.
Which is
we
so
wanna
funny
reduce
to me,
the
because I thought you would totally be all for the bylaw.
Well, I'm completely in favor of reducing impervious area and reducing parking required, but.
Gross floor area. Yeah. What is gross floor area? Is that just where the employer and where the patrons go? Floor area?
No, it's like
No.
the total thing.
It's your
Total
total,
square feet.
instead of net,
Yeah.
It's
instead
not
of
the
your.
retail area, it's the entire
It's your-
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
bedroom, office,
Makes
like
it a
that.
little easier to calculate just
Yeah.
what your square
So this should
footage
just
is.
say square feet, but.
Yeah.
Well, but
But-
it says it's not just looking at the retail space.
No, yeah, I
Yeah.
gotcha.
It's a building.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll come back to that one, all right.
So 713. So my thinking is, right now they're pre-existing non-conforming
Do we
businesses.
have a bylaw that talks about this? Or this is just
Well, pre-existing
For-
non-conforming?
for 711?
No.
No, it's just in residential.
I
The
do not- I do
pre-existing.
not-
No, but I mean, how would this get drafted up for town meeting?
Just a map-
As an
a map
article and
change.
change in the map?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But we don't have anything written yet. This
Not
is
yet,
conceptual.
yeah.
Unless we unless we created a completely different zone, like a town center, because I've seen like Stowe has, is it Stowe or?
A couple of different towns.
Some of them have like business and then they have like town center business.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah. So my thinking is just
So
that,
that would be the creation of a district. You'd have a
Right.
big map, you'd have a district, you'd talk about zoning at that district.
yeah,
You're talking about 2 spots.
yeah, right. So my thinking in bringing this up to the planning board was just that they've been businesses. If you take the Cracker Barrel and
And this is Cracker Barrel, sorry.
Cracker Barrel and
The
Druids.
Wizards, the antique store,
Yeah.
the Druids.
I've seen pictures from 100 years ago when they were businesses.
Yep.
Before there was probably, I don't know when zoning came into play, but before that was a concern, I'm sure.
The Druids property was a bona fide business in the 80s, maybe even into the 90s. There's no antique
Yeah.
store. It did not get a whole ton of
It
traffic.
was there when I moved to.
Was it really?
Yeah,
Okay.
early
all right.
2000s.
So, on a global thing, is that we have the town common. It would be great to have complementary businesses. You know, you have common parking, you have memorial, to have like a real kind of downtown area. The buildings are dilapidated because the owners, you know, they don't really, I don't know what their situation is, but maybe you would get more committed owners or something if it was zone business, because somebody's just not gonna come in and buy the property not knowing what it could be. So for instance, the Cracker Barrel, the current owner is going to the ZBA to get it to be retail in hopes that he could sell it to somebody, I think, right? Because he's not gonna develop it as retail, but the problem is,
So the ZBA can change
they can add,
the zoning.
well, they can add a
If he creates,
use.
if he indicates and they buy onto a hardship, that
It can't be more detrimental to the neighborhood, and you can't be expanding that use over a certain percentage. So there are criteria that you'd have to meet.
Right. But the thing is, they can deny him. So it's tough to sell a property that's pre-existing non-conforming because you don't know what you're getting into, you know? Unless you stay the exact same use, right?
Right.
And so so if say they do become, well, say they're office for 2 years, then for the past 2 years you've been office, so that's pre-existing non-conforming, so it's kind of goes what it's been for the last 2 years,
Yeah.
right? So if they did the
Well, I think it's just whatever the current use is, that's the
Right,
use.
so if the ZBA did approve retail and it became retail, and then 2 years passed, then okay, now you're locked into retail.
Well, his intention is to do retail and office.
Oh,
So he
it's
is
retail
maintaining
slash
a
office.
portion of the office space,
Oh,
but he
okay.
wants to add retail.
My thinking is just that it would add flexibility and value to those properties. And I know that there's definitely concern in the neighborhood that, you know, what's this gonna do to the neighborhood? But I don't see that, you know, it's not like if we allow it to be business, all of a sudden they can tear down the building and build this gigantic retail shop or something, because now if you tear it down, you're subject to the 8%, right? So you never would tear it down because you're not even gonna be able to get a building the size that it is. So what you do is you get, I think it would bring in an owner that wants to, like Frank Patterson with 626, and that was pre-existing non-conforming, and he
brought it through the
he brought it through the process, right? I just think it would improve the look of the properties. I mean, they look pretty run down now. I think you would add more uses to the town center. You would add people wanting to come to the town center. And so I was just looking to see what the board and people in the neighborhood thought. I know it would be definitely a discussion point.
711, 713, 716, 718. 16 and 18 is two different addresses, and it's two different lots. Because what? It's the old
I don't think it's a
condemned?
different lot, it's the same lot, it's just,
Okay.
there's the office space and then there's 2 apartments above.
Oh,
So I
that's
don't
what it
know
is.
exactly.
So if we made it,
Is it the condemned building too?
Oh, no, 716, 718 is Bolton Cracker
it's Cracker
Barrel.
Barrel.
Sorry.
711, 713 are the.
Is that
just the
single
property
building?
here.
It's 3
It's
buildings.
3 buildings on
Okay.
one lot.
Is that barn still red X'd?
Yes, the
Yeah,
barn and
yeah.
the,
So is that slated to come down, or
and 711 are both.
does that have to be demolished in a certain amount of time being red X'd, or just the fire
No,
department says
it's-
we're not going in?
Exactly, that's what
Can't
that
be,
means.
yeah.
Yeah.
It just, well, and they can't have anything in there because it doesn't meet code, right? They can't
In
have-
terms of use, yeah, they
yeah.
can't do anything until they fix that barn to meet
Yeah.
code, right?
So I don't know. I mean, what are the pros and cons to it, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
What are the
I think
cons-
the
what are the cons
challenging-
to doing it?
Well, the challenge is parking, obviously.
yeah,
How
which is kind of what we're trying to take care of in the first one, but
To some extent,
Yeah.
yeah. Parking will always be a challenge. That's probably the biggest, and then utilities in terms of sewer and water.
well, right. So the person did want to do a general store with like coffee and stuff, but they
Which
just
lot?
Cracker Barrel.
Yep.
But they can't because they don't have public water.
And then obviously impact to the neighborhood, you know, residents that are surrounding it. Will there be pushback?
Oh, I'm sure there will be.
I don't think it's a bad idea, and I don't think it's a bad idea because you look at across the street, you had a gas station that was servicing the community, but it became run down. It probably wasn't the highest and best use for that piece of land. That was redeveloped, albeit through a totally different method, but now it's an asset that people can use in the center of our town. These two assets are absolutely no different. They are assets that are not in their highest and best use. They're fine pieces of property, but they have their own issues. They're directly in the center of town. I think it could be a compliment to the downtown, seeing some activity there.
Right.
Seeing folks walking around there, whether they're parking on site or parking off-site.
Right.
There's something to do.
Yeah.
There's money to be spent.
Right, I mean,
There's activity. If we can invigorate a pulse back into those
Yeah.
two properties, I don't see a ton of negative.
I think the common was a good step, but you also need some complementary businesses, other reasons to be there. And, you know, to make it a real town center.
I think no matter what you do, you still do have some challenges. You still
Yeah.
do
The
have.
site
Yeah.
constraints is the biggest thing for me.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're gonna be parking, and I don't know how they're gonna meet
Sewer's a huge
sewer and
issue.
water. I
Yeah.
just don't know how they're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Well, so we talked on email. I know like a couple of years ago, and Mark was kind of involved in this too, although we haven't really done anything with it, is talking about sewer district, which is just a really tough nut to crack. It's, you know, it seems like, it would be a huge financial study to look at it, but, what I said to Erica is maybe the better way to go is try to, if there's any way to find a public water supply, and then keep the tight tanks. I know Jonathan's a big proponent of the sewer district, but I'm just thinking easiest path, to get something there.
Yeah, so the sewer is the biggest issue.
Right. Well,
It's
if you,
bigger than the wells. I mean, just think about it. The Cracker Barrel, I forget what they were spending a year.
Yeah, it's
I think
awful.
it was like 16,000. They were pumping it weekly
Yep.
with the two or three tenants upstairs, and then Eileen was downstairs. So very expensive. I don't think it's the parking. There's plenty of street parking, and
Right.
actually that on Wattaquatic, that seems to fit like 6 cars. That'd be perfect.
yeah.
On the other side of the street, I think they have a leach field, but there's no replacement for it.
Yeah.
And I think it couldn't accommodate, like if you redeveloped
Right.
the other
I
two
will-
buildings.
yeah.
So there is, the current tenant there who has the antique store is very interested in those buildings, but the thing that is holding them back is sewer, and the only way we're gonna get real businesses in there is if they have utilities.
So the EDC presented to the selectmen, I think it might even be 2015 now. It was a while
No, it
ago.
was just
Oh,
a
was
few
it
months
2016?
ago.
Oh, no, but it was the first time we were there.
Okay.
What's the issue?
Well, so most of the houses, what's the issue with doing it?
No, what's
What's
the
the
issue with tying into an existing system where?
Well, so that's what we said. So we have the existing system that the schools and municipals use, and we looked quick to see the usage of it.
Yeah.
And first of all, the overall capacity is 40,000, and we were using about 13,000 gallons a day. So what we said is, oh great, there's plenty. That we have this unused space in this thing that we're paying for and we're upkeeping, and it's just kind of sitting there unused. Could we? They're all piped down Main Street, have all the residences along Main Street tie into it. They would have to pay an assessment. What Harvard did is they charged.
Lancaster did it too.
Yeah, they charged a betterment fee, which I think was like 15 grand, because you're bettering
Yep.
the value of your property, and then you pay a tie-in fee, and then you have sewer. You paying a yearly rate after that. So what we looked is from the blue house next to Bolton Manor.
Yep,
I forget the address of that, but you know which one I'm talking
yep,
about.
yep,
To Manor Road.
yep.
Those houses along there, we looked at the number of bedrooms. And then the Druids property and Cracker Barrel, if they were a business, and even one, I think we looked at it being a restaurant, and we came up with needing about 20,000 gallons. So
20,000 new among all of them.
among the 13.
Yeah.
So you're still at
33 out of
So you're
40.
at 33, so there's still space. I know that what Mark brought up is, even though you're using 13, what is Title V? So maybe you're only using 13, but you're really at 25, 30, I don't know. Because I'm sure the system was designed better than what Title V was. Maybe I'm wrong. we looked at the school usage, and the 10-year plus studies for school actually says that the population is stable or going down, just because of the number of kids.
Yeah.
You know, even when we're talking about kids per household, you know, people have 1 or 2 kids and are done, they're not having like.
What's the issue? People don't think that those capacity numbers are correct?
Well, so we haven't really done the study yet. We're trying to create a study, and that's what Jonathan would like us to do, is to create a study, to do what we're talking about, to look at that study. But then on top of that, so if we do have the capacity,
Yeah,
you know, you have to create a sewer district and have a sewer commissioner.
yeah.
And then you know, money's coming in, money's going out, so it's a whole nother system. I think, you know, globally speaking, I think it would be amazing to have that done, because there's so many houses along 117 that have these tight tanks. I think a couple of houses right over here have like a shared tight tank, so they have like a clause in their, you know, in their mortgage.
They have like $30,000 in escrow with the town in case it fails.
You know, because they have a share system. And then, so then these guys have, Cracker Barrel has a tight tank, which costs over $1,000 a month to empty, or something like that.
No, you're saying 15,000 a year or 16,000?
Yeah.
Eileen knows.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
so it's like $15,000 a year to, you know, just to empty their septic tank.
What
Now, also the other good thing, well, the other problem is, you know, all these septics are so close that if you ever like need a well redrilled, there's really
Right, you
nowhere,
can't do
you're
it.
screwed. You know, so if you took care of the septic, then the water would be easier. And maybe even there would be a place somewhere for a public water supply if the septic was
What
addressed.
is there any negative, I mean,
Well, it'll be the cost, you know. So we're looking at, so we're saying, well, maybe we can use the septic, and what my
but so you're saying the cost for the feasibility study or the cost for the whole
overall,
system?
I mean, there will be a feasibility study, an engineering study you would have to do too, of course. But just thinking, you know, the dream world was that you have the sewer plant, and with your betterment fees and your tie-ins and everything, it would break even.
I don't think it's a dream. This is how other towns do it.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, this is not a negative proposition
No, I
about
mean,
the town.
the bottom line is really, what's the capacity of the system?
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's the Title V capacity that we're actually
Yeah.
have allocated?
yeah.
And how, and what other municipal tie-ins, you know, do we need to leave?
Yeah, I mean,
have
we
space?
obviously need to leave some
So-
space for the schools as well,
Yeah,
because if
just
they
the-
But the
expand
logic
and
is,
all.
even if the system's
But-
not big enough and the system needs to expand,
Yeah.
Well-
betterment
Yeah.
should be designed in such an amount that you're at worst breaking even.
So
With your upfront betterments, with your annual assessments, to pay all these bills.
So the first pass was, there's a lot of excess capacity, you know, 13,000 versus the 48,000-ish that was done. Lots of extra capacity, you can do this for using the existing plant for free and just tie the betterment fee to lay the.
That was
That
what
would be
that
But
was
that's- but-
that was
but I
what the
don't think that's
EDC,
the-
that's what the EDC prevented.
You're probably
But
not,
then-
you're gonna probably have to relay pipe and stuff like that. I mean, you can't, I doubt that.
Well, of course you have to lay.
Yeah,
it
the
out.
whole point is,
Yeah.
Yeah.
these numbers can be quantified. I know
Oh,
it's
yeah.
hard
Yeah,
work.
Yeah.
It can be quantified.
It can be
I would
quantified,
And
yeah.
it should be designed such that those upfront fees. and
I just
those
don't see
monthly or
why
annual
someone would
fees-
want us to do this study and what's the negative here?
Right now,
Well,
the
so
negative
that's-
is, in my
that's-
mind, and I don't know much about this, but
Yeah.
just in the abstract, the negative is in doing nothing. Because in doing nothing,
That's what I'm
you've got the
thinking, yeah.
entire downtown of our town that
Useless.
doesn't work.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
constricted,
That's
it's
not cool.
constrained,
Yeah.
you can't do anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
you can't do anything if
well,
you try
that's
to
what I
sell
was
your
just trying to
house,
wonder
right?
if, I mean, everything I would see about doing a feasibility study to
Yeah.
get to the point
So
where
that's
we
what the
actually
EDC
have real numbers,
requested.
real thoughts.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think that would be 100% yes, I know that there's
Yeah.
money involved
Yeah.
there, but you gotta at least get to the point where you've got real numbers that you
Yeah.
can talk about.
Right.
I just didn't know if there was a negative out there that people didn't even want to do that,
Yeah, well, I think
because I don't see it, but
the
maybe
negative,
I'm not.
so if we did have to add to this, you know, then you have the debate of, oh, well, why are we gonna pay for a neighborhood to have
We're
septic?
not.
But I'm saying this is what people will
They
say.
are paying
Yeah.
to better their property.
Well, if the
And in
betterment,
return,
well,
the values of their
and so that's what
property
the
become
EDC,
real.
that's what the ED was saying, was that the betterment fee would cover the development cost. You know, if, you'd have to do the numbers out.
Absolutely.
You know, maybe the betterment, and the betterment fee is
But it all
required.
benefits the downtown, I mean,
But also betterment, so we're saying, so say it's 20,000, right? You don't get that up front, so the town will have to take out a loan to cover it It's for the initial, if you're gonna
Yeah.
design it,
Yeah.
Okay.
you know, so that,
Correct.
so,
Correct.
so you're fronting the money as a town,
Yes.
and then you're getting paid back maybe with interest, you know? So maybe in 10 years, financially you gain.
But again,
Yeah.
it's, while it definitely directly affects those properties, it's also our downtown area, which
Yeah.
I think is an.
Well, so I'm giving you negatives, but as the EDC, we thought this was kind of an imperative, like, especially for
Absolutely.
those business properties.
Yeah.
But I mean, I got very discouraged when I brought it up at the selectmen, because I really just got hammered by the people in the audience, and I kind of personally got discouraged
Oh.
by it.
Well, that's why
Yeah,
I'm wondering
yeah,
why people
yeah.
are hammering you. I mean, I think that.
Just, you know, oh, you know, we didn't design it for that, we, you know, the schools are gonna expand, you know, leach field, like, there's just a lot of negativity.
Yeah,
I'm missing something.
no, I've gotten emails, and the negativity is, why should we give something to benefit Main Street? So it's kind of
But I don't think we're
Back
giving
Street
any.
versus Main Street. It's like an
Yeah.
old fight that I don't even know what it's about, but it's
Okay.
really entrenched.
Yeah,
And
that was what I got, yeah.
so the important thing to emphasize is the system, I think, is 18 years old, and it's starting to get expensive.
Okay.
Big parts, I think we spent last year 100, and
It's not 18 years.
It's like 10 maybe, or 12.
Yeah.
Well, it was the school, wasn't it, or no? Is it newer than the school?
It's newer than the school.
Okay, all right, then I don't know.
It's on par with the library edition and the public safety.
Yeah,
Oh, good
it was
call.
like about 2 years before the library. So I'd say
Okay.
2007.
That's
So
around
10
10
years,
Okay.
all right, so 10 years.
so
But
I
we
think
never
the
done any
last,
maintenance on it, so.
But why
the
do a
last
major
year was
capital
like
project?
80,000 we
Yeah.
had to spend on new pumps.
And now we have,
Right, but
now we
that
have.
was the first time in 10 years we've.
Right, but things are coming to the end of their life.
Yeah,
So it's
Okay.
becoming more expensive. So you just have to imagine sharing those costs rather than running it at a quarter of the capacity and having to pay for all of that maintenance. The other thing is, you know, in some of the documents I read, the engineers talk about the system could be expanded. So,
Right,
The
could you just,
existing system.
could you just add, you know, well, you need land to leach, but, you know, just, is it easier, is there a place to just add another pump or whatever for more capacity?
yes, I mean, in one report I read, they talked about the ability to expand it. So, you know, most towns are proud of their town centers. They want it to look good and operate well.
Sure.
The biggest thing for me is I walk on Main Street. I've been to events in the Common, and when the water's table is high, you can smell gases from people's septic systems. It's just not what, you know, a good town does. Like,
And
if
if you
yours
just
a
look at the
problem like
numbers
that.
themselves, the values of the properties with this issue, inability to sell those assets readily
Yeah.
affects
Well, I mean,
everybody.
tight
That's- yeah.
tanks have been, I mean, not allowed for, decades now. So, and the fact that they don't have the space to put a leaching field constrains.
so the Cracker Barrel, I was on the Board of Health when we did that, between the well location and the, I mean, the size of the lot, there was no choice but to put a tight tank
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, well, because you're constrained.
Yeah, it's, I mean, absolutely, I mean, that was kind of the last choice.
No,
We could not
yeah.
find enough Title V variances to get anything else in there but a tight
but I think
tank.
that's the
So,
perfect
but-
example of having a sewer district. Would eliminate
Yeah, right,
this.
and so not only were we talking about, you know, benefiting those potential businesses, the pre-existing non-conforming businesses, but, you know, just in general, when you drive down Main Street now, it looks very old and dilapidated. And the problem with that is, like, for instance, the house to the left of the Common, I think that's Bonzoli's house, right to the left?
Bambi,
Huh? Oh, okay.
Bambi, Philbin.
I mean, they just pretty much, you know, their system got, you know, Board of Health made them replace their system, and I don't know if it's already happened or if they have to put in a tight tank, but it's like a $50,000. It's a huge cost to people who are barely hanging on, paying the taxes as is.
Yeah.
So now you have this huge cost and this huge monthly cost now of having to empty this. And so, you know, now instead of putting money into updating the house and looking better for the town center, they have to put this
Deal with
money into,
that, yeah.
they're dealing with that. And it hurts to resell it. So maybe the house doesn't sell, and then it, you know, either somebody who cares about, you know, somebody wants to put in the house and update it, or maybe it becomes a rental, or it just falls into disrepair. So I think the sewer district would help with the overall look and feel of town center, and it would improve the value of everybody's property.
Well, where is the status of the potential doing a feasibility study?
I mean, we just have to go to the selectmen. And
How much would
Jonathan,
it cost?
well, the initial,
Eric and I need to write up a mission statement.
yeah, yeah. Well,
It's just a study committee.
It's just a study committee
Yeah.
to start.
No,
I mean,
that's fine. I
the
just-
engineering, so I actually think that engineering study cost to actually go in and do a, really
Yeah,
deep
that's-
dive, that will be the hardest money to get, because when we actually do the district, like you said, we can do betterment fees,
Yeah.
but we're gonna have
It's
to.
You have to come up with some.
We're gonna have to put money
fees,
up front for this
Yeah.
study, which maybe it's 100, I don't know what it costs, Maybe we have a civil engineer in town who wants to do it for
I was
free,
gonna
I don't
say.
know.
You should
Yeah,
ask
because
Brandon.
from a distance, I see upfront costs, I see
Yeah.
capital costs,
Yeah,
and I see a structure that a lot of towns do, where people pay into that, and I see value-add implications to, I wouldn't say the businesses, I would say the properties, it's all of the
Well,
properties.
It's
all the
all of them.
properties,
It's
all the
all of
properties.
them. All of
Well,
them would get
I said the
that.
businesses just because that was the inroad that the EDC
Sure,
came in from.
sure.
But I know Jonathan was talking about it on the planning board like 5 years ago or 4 years ago,
I can't imagine it's a net cost at the end of the day.
Well, it depends, if there's some houses that don't want to tie into it, you
Well-
can't force them, right?
Well, no,
Right.
betterment fee is, you're forced, if you're in the district, whether you want to tie in or not, because there's a betterment fee, which you're required, and then there's a tie-in fee, which you're not required. And the way Harvard did it is, first year, it's 1,000, second year, it's 3,000, third year, it's 5,000 for tie-in.
For the time.
The betterment fee was, whether you want in or not, you're assessed $17,000. I think that was the number. Because
Your
even if,
property is being bettered, whether you're going to
By
take
having
advantage of it
tie-in.
or
Or not.
future
Yes.
buyer.
Sure.
I get it, but I can see why
Paying
people would push back
taxes
on that
and
too.
you're paying 17,000, and you could take like a 10 or 20-year
Yeah.
payment schedule or something. But the problem is, and I'm sure, just thinking the negatives, is the town has to put up the money in the front.
Yep. So, big circle.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that is the bigger problem. I've talked to businesses before that, larger businesses, kind of greenfields, not redevelopments here, that would be dissuade from coming to a town like this, or a town like
Because of the
Foxborough, or a town like Harvard, because, well, Harvard's different now, because there are no common infrastructures. But if we're identifying 4 addresses, effectively two properties here, that could potentially be bettered. no pun
So
intended,
7-Eleven
by
to
giving
7,
them that flexibility.
right, so if we
I
did
still
have
don't
that,
see
the
negativity.
Druids could become an ice cream parlor or a sandwich shop or something right on the common, which is just not possible now because of the infrastructure.
And again, yeah,
Yeah.
right, so there's the infrastructure problem still.
I think you guys are all jumping the gun.
Can you introduce yourself,
Yeah,
please?
Ocean Vine, 702 Main. I'm here because I am a little concerned about this talk of rezoning, the 2 properties that you've mentioned. Mostly because I think you're going into it in a backwards way. You're going into it specifically to help 2 properties that your change of zoning isn't gonna change much for them, for what they can do now. I mean, pretend that, the Cracker Barrel guy wants retail and he can get that through ZBA. I have no problem with that,
Why? Why is that different?
because he can get it through ZBA.
Or
But he-
or the ZBA can turn them down.
Well, they probably won't. I mean, it was retail before.
Yeah.
They're probably not gonna turn it down.
But why,
I don't
how's
think
that
most-
different from what we're doing here?
Well, I think you get a lot of pushback in the center from the historic district, because what we live in fear of is having a large business zone that will really drive us all out. It won't be residential.
Where do you think the business zone's gonna be though,
Well,
besides
so
those 2?
if, just hear me out.
Yeah.
You're talking about taking 2 properties that aren't even abutting each other. They're diagonally across the street from
In the
each
center
other.
of town.
In the
Yeah.
center of town. And they already exist. And what difference, what would change for them if you give them limited business? There may be some pluses, but there's also gonna be some negatives to the rest of us, because it's a toehold, and that it doesn't take much effort after that for Murphy's to say, oh, we want to be in. And then if you put Murphy's in, you're like, well, why not put all the houses in between in? Why not make that whole block? And, you know, so slowly, you're eroding the idea of a residential town center. And, you know, that may be what you want to do, and it may be that you do want a business district there, but I think that is something for master planning to take up. And I think, you know, you should decide you want a business district, and then you should figure out what properties you want to put in it, and you should study the impact on the properties in it or beside it. And, you know, you're talking a major, major change.
I think a business district would be a major change. I think looking at
But
two-
you're starting a business district, and you're also sort of spot zoning, because you've said explicitly that you're doing it for them, and they're two little tiny properties.
Well, it doesn't matter how big they are, it matters that there's more than one. And the
Right,
rhyme and
but
reason
I think
behind it
it's a
too is
pretty
that it's the
weak-
center of town.
It's the center of town, but it's the center of a residential town.
But, I mean,
Compare it to some of our neighbors though. I mean, we have nothing but a monotone in this town. It's houses, nothing else, no service.
I'm all
That's
for
a
more
huge
business.
detriment to
Listen, I'm
all of
all
our
for more
taxes.
business. I'm just saying,
Well, that's
that
where
you
they would
can
go,
find-
right? The center of town.
they're not gonna go there.
They have other serious obstacles, but if we can alleviate one of them, I'm struggling to see the negative.
Well, I could see if you know, when you get to the point when there's a sewer district, that may be appropriate to rezone that and say, you know, we do want this to be more, you know, dense. You could, if you had a sewer district there, you could have more dense housing, you could have affordable housing, you could have more apartments, because we could all add on bedrooms to our houses. You know, that may be what you decide as a town that you want to do, but, you know, I think just, you know, if you're thinking about this May, coming up with these two properties, changing them, you know, it's just not, it's just, that, to me, there seems to be no benefit to the neighborhood. Why would we want that? You know, why would we ever want to vote for that?
I don't think we're looking for the neighborhood. I think we're looking at the whole town. And I think we're saying you've got two properties in the center of town that have had a history of being effectively commercial use. But because of the way they've obtained commercial use, existing non-conforming, they're pretty stymied. They're pretty limited with respect to what they
Well,
can do
what
there.
would change then? What, if they were a limited business right now, what do you foresee?
I think it makes the argument.
Surety of use.
exactly.
It's no longer at the whims of
But it makes the
ZBA.
argument of the sewer district and its viability that much stronger.
Well,
I think it furthers that
And that's a
conversation.
completely separate, whether they're
It is separate.
non-conforming or.
That's what I was
whether
seeing, a
they're business.
surety.
But I think it's the surety for the owners that, you know, it's, as long as they fit within the uses in, you know, for limited business, they can sell it as any kind of business like that.
Right.
It's not at the whim, you know, kind of whim of whatever the ZBA approves or doesn't approve.
Right, so if the Druids,
So the-
if they wanna sell their property, some potential owner would be like, oh, well, I would love to buy this property, but I don't know if
I
CPA
don't-
will approve my use or not, so, you know, whether, you know, it's
So
not
the
worth
town
as
would have
much.
no say over what went in there, or?
Yeah, the table of uses on limited business.
Yeah.
And there's a special permit process for that.
So what are the uses for a limited business?
I mean, as a host,
I mean, I don't know, and I brought this up, you know, if we want to even have a subset of the limited business, a subset of town center limited business, like, you know, limited business District 2 or whatever you want to call it, you know, even anymore. The one, you know, maybe you don't want, I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there.
it's a logical argument.
Yeah.
It's more,
Yeah, if you want
I
to call
think
it.
it's longer term. I see two lots in town that have been improved by historically commercial uses, but they're getting at it a backwards way. And they're handicapped in a bunch of ways. And I think the biggest way is infrastructure. But if we
It is
can-
interesting.
It is, but if you can make a step towards some viability in not only those property owners' assets, but I think more importantly, the center of our town, I struggle to see how anybody loses. I really do.
Well, no, I mean, you're totally disregarding the impact to all the other properties, and there's more other
I think that's
properties.
what you're doing. I'm trying to look at the whole town and
You
say,
are,
we
except
have
that-
a center,
I'm
and it's
just
kind of
saying-
null and void right now.
But if you look historically at that whole area, it's the businesses that have failed. They're the ones that have been looking the worst. And if you introduce a business district there, you might get the reverse. You might get it so that the residential people start saying, well, you know, we're gonna be a business district eventually. Do I wanna improve my property for housing, or do I wanna just let it go and see, am I gonna sell it eventually to a donut shop, or, you know,
I
like,
think you do run that risk if you create more of a CBD business district. I think if you take two properties that are in the center of town,
Just add them to
that
that.
have historically struggled, and say, let's call this what it is, then you get a little bit closer towards a viable owner coming in and doing something, or an existing owner coming in and doing something, cleaning up the property and making something of it.
what would you think though if other houses in between say, we wanna be in the business district too, after you already have a business district?
But,
Don't you see
we're
that
not
as a
proposing a
total?
business district. I think that's the difference. We're looking at two
Yeah.
properties.
I'm saying that it's really one and the same.
I mean, she's just saying, well, now you
I
have these two.
mean,
and
once
the
you,
neighbor
once you
says,
have
well,
two
what about me?
businesses
And
there,
I guess it's an
across
argument.
the street from each
sure.
other, then you're saying, well, what about that other corner?
The other
Why don't we put
corner
that one in it?
was a house ad infinitum. Right here, these are two businesses, but we're not calling them businesses.
Right, but let's say somebody wants to buy that other corner, and they say, hey, you know, across the street from me is business.
But I don't think
across
it's
the
apples
street
to
from me-
apples. You're right in terms of geography. Across the street is business. But across the street is something that was a business, I'll pick a year, 100 years ago. And it is today, but we're not calling it that. It's only grandfathered.
And then.
I think we call it
And
what
then
it
the
is.
zoning that came
These are
into
two
play,
businesses.
the zoning that came into play, whatever, 20, 30 years ago, now is kind of hampering the former model.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and so I just was trying to look at the map. I mean, the limited business areas are not all in one area. I mean,
Sure.
there's 3 different areas. I mean, you've got one there, the bigger one there, and then there's even a small
Mhm.
one, you know,
Yeah.
up there.
Yeah, that's
So
cool.
there's nothing to say it couldn't be just those 2 houses. And it's, again, it's not a district, it's just rezoning it, but
I mean, I see,
I see your concern
I
I
see
think
for
this is,
creating
you're
a
just gonna get a lot of
district.
pushback, I guess I would say that. And I don't think you have, right now, you don't have a very strong argument, because what you're saying is, you're legitimizing them, but you're not really helping their real problems. Their real problems are parking, water, sewer, and the traffic.
But if they have 4 problems, and we have the power to
Oh, well, and
recommend
the
to the town,
fifth is the zoning problem.
if we have the power to recommend to the town that we alleviate one of their problems and call the duck a duck, because it's what it is, I don't see the negative.
Well, but a lot of other people will see it as negative, so it's almost like you're solving 1 out of 5 problems. That's really not gonna change the way these businesses operate, unless it's like 15 years down the road, when you solve the other 4.
Sure.
But, you know, in the meantime, we might see it that you are eventually, that the town itself is going to go more business in that area. And we would all behave differently.
I think the town itself needs to go more business than it is today.
Well, you think that, but I think there's a lot of people in town who might not think that.
I think there's a lot of people who agree with me as well. I think the town is very monotone, and has been for a long time. And it is killing residents with tax burden, with lack of amenities, ultimately with property values, viability of the town. I think it's a problem that needs to be solved. I
It
think
is
we
a
gotta
problem.
attack it a bunch of different
It
ways.
is a problem, but I think there are a lot of things you can do to alleviate the problem. And I do think there are other places where you can encourage business your lot coverage idea is good for the existing business areas.
And
I
it's
mean,
a
there's-
similar, I'm
there's
glad
a
you
lot-
brought that up, because it's a similar philosophy, at least in my mind. Instead of, I've stolen this from you, instead of trying to find new areas and go greenfield, let's take a look at existing business areas that we have today that aren't working for one reason or another. Parking might be an issue, lot coverage might be an issue.
Can't expand, can't.
What's it?
Like, you can't expand, you
Yeah.
can't, you're limited on
Yeah.
that stuff. Is there a way for us to help those existing businesses?
I mean, I know.
This is one way. I totally agree with you. It's not the only way to
No,
solve
I-
the problem with these two properties, but it's one way to take a step forward with these two properties.
But it's really.
They're business properties, but we're
I
not really
mean-
calling them business properties.
I think they're really marginal business properties,
Historically, they were real business properties.
yes, and they failed, mostly. Both of those properties have made more money on their housing units than their business units.
What happens to the housing units if
Right, that's
if
my other
this
question.
goes through?
It becomes grandfathered. So then that becomes the pre-existing non-conforming.
So if that owner chooses
But-
to use that as residential, which will never happen, then they may.
No,
But
but it's
could-
like, so,
Would they use it as business? Would they say, we want office retail, so now we're gonna have retail on the first floor of the Cracker Barrel, let's have office on the second?
Yeah.
well,
I
for
would
me
imagine so.
though,
I've never talked to them.
Yeah, yeah, I mean,
Eric has.
yeah.
I would imagine so,
Yeah,
yeah.
you probably would, yeah.
no, but for me,
Eventually.
it's, so if
See-
people don't use the residential for 2 years, then that goes away. the
Mhm.
ability.
Yeah, it would be the exact opposite, yeah.
So that's one thing I question, losing that ability. The residential, it's like the mixed use, you have residential upstairs and businesses downstairs, so that's a concern I
I
have.
think the
'cause I-
owner of the property could choose to keep it going under a grandfather right if they wanted to. I
Right.
think the town as a whole is not gonna have a problem if we lose a couple of residential units, because it's the only thing that we have. I think to open up to a little bit of diversity and get something other than housing.
No, I get that, I'm just saying, you need to think through that, the
Yeah,
upstairs, because can you really have business upstairs?
and that is some of your diverse housing.
It is.
Yes, you
That's
don't
some of
wanna
your
lose
affordable
the
housing?
mixed
Sure.
use quality by.
That is a concern, sure, sure.
And then the
I
other
mean, we have a
thing,
lot bigger problem in diverse housing than 2 apartments, but, I mean, we have to address it on a more,
no, it's 2 at the Cracker Barrel, and it's might be 1.
I mean, we want to address,
The
we want to
Druids.
address that on a bigger scale. Consider we're only at 3% affordable,
Right, I know, but we're talking about,
It's not affordable in the
Definition
formal,
way.
yeah.
Yeah,
We're just talking affordable,
Diversity.
meaning, yeah.
yeah.
yep, yep.
and then, if the ZBA grants this, it just kind of weakens, I think, if the ZBA grants the petition.
So when's that happening? That's
Monday,
ongoing
I think
now?
it's coming up.
Okay.
It just weakens like the need for this,
Yeah, of
I
course.
think.
Well, not really, because
Yeah.
it still stands where, what you said, the surety of a new owner coming in, knowing what he's coming into. Whereas coming into a pre-existing non-conforming, you're not guaranteed anything unless you're the
Yeah.
same exact business.
It's a
I
step
think-
in the direction
yeah.
that we would try to go to, creating some value in that downtown.
I think the table
But I
of
hear-
uses, it would be good to look at them, and like Eric suggested, looking at them and maybe,
Envision what could be here.
yeah, just thinking about those specific sites and the table of uses for limited business.
I'd look right down the street at what we all did at 626
Right.
and look at that as, it fit within the table of uses, it went through our process, it was a
Mhm.
success. I think, we're not, I mean, I don't envision a super Target going in here.
Oh, I know.
Right?
It's-
I'm
it's
envisioning
worth
something
going
that
over the
complements the
details.
downtown and benefits everybody down,
Well,
not
and so-
just those property owners
The one,
that own those two sites.
I mean, you would just want to, if there's anything high impact in the limited business that we deem high impact and we wouldn't want there, maybe we do need to make a subset,
Sure, but now, to see his point, you're going down the road of a limited
Well,
business district.
I know, I was just trying to make it more palatable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But in terms of limited business use, we're really talking retail, restaurant, office, and then potentially a bed and breakfast. That's really what you're talking.
Yeah.
about.
And with the septic, you're not gonna have a bed and
No,
breakfast.
not right now.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Not right
So
now.
it's-
But that's my logic. I mean, if you
So-
can break down one of the problems, you made some progress. What's wrong?
And we're trying to take care of the parking.
Sure.
Yep.
In
It's
parking, I
not the
don't
biggest
want
issue,
to
but
minimize the parking issue, because that's major too.
Well,
It's
that's
not
what-
just, I'm not just saying parking, but
Yeah.
traffic circulation, impact to that intersection,
Yeah.
traffic. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot to consider.
well, it's the first of many conversations, so we're going to keep on talking
Yep.
about this. I appreciate your input.
Yep.
We all do very, very
And
much.
like I told you in
Yeah.
email, I mean,
Yep, no, I know.
you know, it's just the start of the discussion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And, you know, I would like every single neighbor to be in the room.
Totally.
Because we want to hear from everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more information the better.
Talk about lot coverage?
Yes, this is another one that I brought up.
What, but just to answer that though, what would happen if everyone came in the neighborhood and said, we don't want this? Would you still say, oh, we're doing it for the town?
I have
Depends
no
what we hear from other people in
agenda.
town.
I want to hear what the neighborhood says, I want to hear what you have to say, I'm listening to what others in
Yeah.
town have to
Yeah,
say.
okay.
It's all about consensus.
Yeah, okay.
I'm recommending a cottage overlay that very well could happen on my street. That's why I'm not being selfish.
So dovetailing into coverage, and looking at, so Erica sent us a sheet on comparing coverage of other towns, and by far we're a lot less than everybody. And so, and I remember in this Stan and Teresa debate, that was a big discussion point of, it might have been, I forget who it was, but she said something, paraphrasing, like, oh, well, you know, somebody said, oh, well, you'd have to like double the business, you know, to make an impact. And the person said, well, what are all these other lots that you're going to make business, you know, from residential business? And like, my whole thinking is you don't need to do that. Our coverage of the current lots is so low that we could double our coverage and still not be what the other towns are. And you double the potential of those lots. So, I mean, one of the big issues with the Kane property was that they just couldn't fit what they wanted to put because the coverage was so low, you know?
So we're 8%, Stowe is 30,
Right. Stowe's 30%.
across the board, commercial, business, industrial.
Yeah.
Wait, where does it say, it says open space is 30%.
No, max floor area.
Next area.
Oh, there, sorry, there.
So they take out wetlands, they
Yeah,
take
It's a
out,
little bit of.
Yeah, 30% is buildable.
Generally
yeah,
speaking.
so it's 30% of buildable lots, so I mean, if you're like
So it's
80% wetlands, then of course.
Well, and that's what my point was, you know, I don't think we should just, like you originally thought of, you know, going from 8 to 12 or 8 to 16, I was saying, well, let's first look at these other
I
ones.
was just saying,
Yeah,
I was
and
using the
let's get a
doubling
number
thing,
that I
yeah.
think makes sense. I
Yeah.
mean, if 30% is the right number, then we should use
So,
that.
so Stowe is 30%.
Okay.
Acton's 20.
Well, hold on, so,
Foxborough's 10.
but no, Boxborough business, if floor area ratio is none. So they
Oh.
have no kind of limiting factor for their floor area ratio, right? Is that what that means?
For business.
For
Business, for
sure.
office or industrial.
For office or
Yeah.
industrial is 10, but for their business zone, there's no coverage.
Right,
But
but we
I-
also need to
that-
understand where their business zone
Yeah,
is.
it could be small
It could
lots.
be very small lots.
Like,
who
like
knows?
if their business zone is Cracker Barrel and Druitt's,
It makes sense,
you can
no,
have
yeah.
0%,
Yeah.
you can
I
have
mean,
100% coverage.
First thing to point out is, we have everything, we have business, limited business, and industrial, all as the same percentage.
Right.
Everyone else
Yeah.
divides them up, and
Yeah.
clearly, they are different uses,
Yeah.
and I think should be looked at differently.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah.
Berlin's calculation is pretty crazy.
Well, Stowe's across the board, 30, 30, 30, right?
Stowe's 30, 30, 30.
It is, it changes
Yeah,
the
The open
setbacks
space
accordingly.
And then
Um,
open space percentage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Acton looks like they have a 20% and a 40% zone versus Acton's a lot more congested than Bolton, so it's not a good.
Yeah,
Hopkinton a
yeah.
half,
It's hard.
Hawking has, what?
50%.
They have all different, so they
Well,
have,
for industrial.
so they have rural business, which I guess we would be rural business maybe, and that they don't have a designation for. And
Right.
downtown business, they don't, for the same reason, their lots are so small that it's all gonna be covered. It's an
Yeah.
old, you know,
Yeah.
it's an old brick building or whatever. But, so, I was, concerned about, thinking about the businesses, Kane property, and all those, Bolton Manor, no, what is it, the corner, Bolton Corners, that one. But then, so those are the business ones, but then industrial, which, I also want to address this, because we're 8% in industrial, but, so Cobham's up for sale, and they're already at 15%, or maybe a little less.
Something like that.
Yeah, so, I mean, they're already at 15% as it is pre-existing.
Yeah.
What would be good with Cobham is if the town could offer a TIF to a company, because they're gonna have a hard time selling for a bunch of reasons. One, I know they're concerned about traffic and stuff, but if we could offer a TIF, which means for so they're 15%, so if, say we made it 30%, the town could offer a tax rebate. So I think it's if not for this TIF, the town created a deal saying, so you expand it, so we get them to expand it, and for 5 years, we're not gonna tax you, but at 5 years, then you'll be taxed. So you incentivize businesses to come in and expand their business, so you can, in the end, be getting more tax revenue. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and same thing with Paragon, the EDC had our business breakfast in Paragon. I think I showed you guys the picture. I mean, from the street, you don't really even notice Paragon, but when you go inside there, it's huge. The manufacturing floor is so big, and it's a lot of high-tech stuff. You wouldn't even know. You wouldn't even know from the street. So there's definitely ways, and with the special permit process going through the design review board and planning board special permit and selectmen's site plan review, I mean, it could be done in a way to fit in the landscape, So I think given our very few industrial properties, which is the Paragon area and Cobham, and there's actually undeveloped industrial lot next to Cobham.
Where is that?
So if you're looking at Cobham,
Yeah.
right to the left, there's an undeveloped lot.
On the town line? More or
Yes,
less.
yeah.
Right.
How many acres?
It's over 10.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number.
Does it back up to Bolton Woods Way?
It
It's
does.
got to,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
But it's zoned industrial.
yeah.
I mean, again, any development, that would all be
Our
typical.
pot growing facility.
Right.
It's in the district.
Yeah. My only thinking is, so we're at, so say we went to 20% or 25% for industrial, we would have room for these businesses to expand. And I think Paragon pays Bolton in taxes, I think it's like $150,000 a year, is it something?
I don't know.
I think I looked at the chart. And that's a huge, per year revenue generator, and if we could double that.
Well, what percent coverage is Paragon at?
I don't remember what Paragon is, I just know Cobham because they're up for sale and they're at 15%. But you would definitely add a lot of
I think
value
there's,
to those properties.
yeah, I think there's absolute benefit to increasing it, and the way to still maintain the rural component that we want to
Yeah.
is to make sure our setbacks, our open space,
Yeah.
those are all addressed as well. I mean, we don't
Right,
have.
because Stowe even says, they say 30%, but then they also dictate open space
Yeah.
required.
I think that's a key component, because as we allow more coverage, we need to make sure there's a minimum open space.
And we don't have that now.
absolutely included. Yeah.
So we address that, but also add the open space required.
We add that, and we make sure there's clear we've got setbacks right now,
Yeah.
but, looking at that with regard to the open space, and that you can make it so that it's a place that maybe it's setback, it's not gonna be seen as much, you've got your open,
And I think I've had like a couple of articles that, at town meeting, I always try to explain the special permit process and how powerful it is, how much say we have as a board in town over everything. I mean, Jonathan's favorite, lighting, parking, and at the end, there's a clause, detrimental to the neighborhood. So really, I mean, if it's I know like when like the solar panel factories went into Devon's, like the entire neighborhood heard this loud hum, so noise coming out of there, emissions, waste, whatever waste comes out. I mean, all of this is controlled by the special permit process, so, you know, you can definitely get low impact.
Yeah, I mean, I think the
Yeah.
bottom line is, you know, we need to be able to allow business to
Yeah,
either
in the
come
area
here
we
more
have.
or expand,
Right.
but we need to do it in a smart way,
Yeah.
that we're not gonna lose the character of,
Yeah.
you know, the surrounding areas. And I think there's ways to do it. And some of these, you know, for example, still with the open space and a couple other things here, we can put in to make sure it's included.
So like, yeah, Stowe, just for you two, I don't know if you have this. So Stowe's, so Stowe's business, so that would be like, I guess, our limited business. Stowe's business is 30% coverage, but open space is just 20%, because I guess they figure that's real low impact. Their industrial is 30% coverage, but 40%, so they require more open space, probably to buffer from neighborhoods and stuff like that, you know? So we could definitely add that into ours.
And they've changed their setbacks too. Your front yard setback for industrial is 100,
Yeah,
your business front yard setback is 50.
right,
So, I mean,
which
they,
makes sense, yeah.
yeah, again, it's that not wanting to see that huge industrial building and stuff.
I mean, just as I
And
see.
it's also by going down to 50 or 100, it lets you look at parking in the rear and
Yes.
things like that,
Yeah.
that right now doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I think we should address is the mixed-use overlay is 10%, which developers just laugh at, because you're asking
You can't
for,
do it.
you're asking for like 50% residential.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't say that, but you know, we're saying roughly even, so we're asking for 50% residential, and then this mixed use, which like, how can you do that with 10%? It makes no sense. So, I mean, that should probably be 30%. I don't know what the number is, but, you know, to make it even possible.
Just going back to the overlay, I mean, we looked at models for those plots and those plots can't even support more than 10% when you look at the septic and all the other,
So a mixed use overlay, maybe you say that there's an on-site sewage plant, you know? Just like 626 has its own sewage plant, you know?
that's never gonna happen again. And just in oh, you're saying the Cracker Barrel, I mean,
Frank's.
what, Frank's Place, I mean, that's not,
I mean, he went way above and
a
beyond.
sewage treatment, I mean, that's like a pre-treatment system, but it's not like,
That's
Well,
not a wastewater
yeah.
treatment system.
yeah.
Okay.
That can't be over.
I mean, the last
10,000.
one is the Ridge, what's that place, Sunset
Sunset
Ridge,
Ridge.
and I think they pay like 500 and something a month just to service that per household, it's more. So it's just, those systems are expensive.
Well, I mean, if that's the limiting factor, then fine, that's the limiting factor, you know?
Yeah, no, it's just, we looked at that.
I mean, there's definitely, private water and sewer is the limiting factor in most of these discussions.
Mhm.
Sounds like we need a sewage treatment district.
Yeah.
Well, no, but so
Um,
when we were talking about sewage district, we definitely stopped at the Blue House, whatever that address is, because, you know, Bolton Office Park, the capacity is just, it goes exponential, you know, so we were thinking kind of on a we were trying to take a manageable bite into it, you know.
Well, I think this is a good idea. We just need to figure out some of the numbers.
What set of numbers would like the best update from town planner?
Just real quick, I wanted to give you an update that next meeting we'll have the definitive subdivision hearing for Tadmore, and I'll be sending out, I've just been so busy, but I'm gonna send you tomorrow a link to all the documents so you can review it.
So-
Which
question for
subdivision
that.
is this?
This is-
Forbush.
Yeah,
Okay.
So, question for that. I thought I was supposed to be in a butter.
you are in a butter,
I have
yes.
not received anything.
You should have.
I did not receive a notice. Because it was one of my neighbors who asked me about plans.
That's
and I was
okay, you
like,
can
"I
vote
haven't seen that."
instead.
Well,
Well,
but
so
her
that
concern
was my
is,
question.
her concern is that people weren't properly notified.
Well, yeah, so.
Let me check to see if yours was bounced back, because sometimes I get like return sender and I put it in the file. So
Okay.
let me check to see. But no, they were sent out, I mean,
I know they were sent out because my neighbor received
Yeah.
one, but then she was, or he was asking me about it, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Maybe the dog ate yours.
I don't have a dog, but.
It's been a while. What did we do with them? We did a prelim
Preliminary.
hearing, opened it and closed it. We have not opened a final.
Right, this is.
Okay.
And we did the A&R.
That's right.
Yep.
Have we done a site walk?
No, not yet for this
Okay.
one.
No, you didn't you do a?
We exactly
Cancel.
canceled.
Oh, you okay, 'cause I
Yeah,
didn't go to
so
that.
we-
Should we do one prior to the opening of it, or no?
No,
That's
because
done.
you really need to
can't do
open the
that.
hearing
Got it,
before,
got it.
yeah.
Okay, all right.
So that's coming up, and then,
I mean, if I'm not on the list, then that's
no,
great.
you're on the list, you should have gotten one.
Nice
Yeah.
try,
I was
Seth.
trying to.
You sure the kids didn't sign for it, or just forgot to tell you?
And I have time, I
Okay.
may just tomorrow pop one in the mail.
Well, I just want to
You
make
know,
sure I'm not
just
the
to-
only
to-
one that maybe has
What is it,
missed
2 weeks
so.
notice?
There is no real time frame in terms, it's just notifying the abutters,
Oh.
so, I'll resend it to you
Okay.
at a minimum.
Okay, that'd be great.
And then in November, more than likely, we'll have a hearing for a common driveway off of Von Hill Road.
Von Hill Common, which one?
Yeah,
Have you seen
and I
it
think
before?
it's 105 Von Hill.
Going up the hill?
It's like across from the International. Or
Vaughn?
near there.
Von Hill?
I'm
Wait,
sorry,
the
Vol-
international, I was like, wait,
Vol-
No, I'm getting my
I was like, those are two
projects,
different directions.
getting my projects confused. It's I think it, you know what, now I'm getting myself confused.
That's okay, I mean-
Plan.
So many hills.
Von-
Yeah, I'm good. Can we make a motion to close the hearing?
Right, it smells
I should sign it. Yep, that doesn't, I could just sign it. Yes, okay.
Can we make a motion to close the hearing?
I don't know if she had some more stuff she wanted to tell us.
I think Danielle doesn't care.
Ready to go.
It's past the Richmond, so.
It's 105 Von Hill Road.
Von Hill.
Yes, not Malville.
Have we seen this before or talked
No,
about it?
this is brand new, this came in like last week.
Okay.
Do you have any update on 470 or nothing to give?
She was moving forward with Dunkin' Donuts and wanting to do like the refacing of the existing building.
Yeah. So that you can do that first.
That's their intent, I don't know exactly their
Okay.
timeline. Initiatives, I'll go over that another time, it's getting pretty late.
I'm drifting.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm done.
I'm done.
She just made a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Good night.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, guys.